The sea mist clung to Jon Snow's beard as the narrow skiff cut through the slate-gray waters beneath Dragonstone's towering volcanic bluff. Storm-swollen breakers hurled themselves against the island's basalt jaws, yet the small craft pressed on, oars creaking like old bones. Jon kept one gloved hand on the gunwale, the other clenched around the dragonglass pendant Melisandre had once pressed upon him before disappearing into distant horizons. Every salt-stung breath tasted of change, bitter, exhilarating, and vast. He had left Winterfell at dawn 8 days prior, the sky the color of tarnished steel, choosing secrecy over ceremony. Sansa's last words lingered in his mind like embers in ash. Rule from wherever you must, but do not forget the North watches. She had seen the unspoken in his eyes, that his duty now curved southward, toward a queen with dragons and a destiny written in flame. Jon's farewell to Ghost had been wordless. The dire wolf understood paths that called their own. Beneath the sails of his borrowed galley, Jon studied old maps, tracing frozen rivers and mountain passes destined soon to feel the Night King's chill. Yet with each league south, the choice knit itself tighter, to beg Daenerys for aid and return north, or to remain, shaping the fire that might meet the coming ice. Now, as the skiff spun in the lee of the fortress, Dragonstone rose like a black crown upon a smoking throne. Gargoyles scowled from ramparts. Carved dragons curled their wings along battlements still warm with the breath of their living kin. Clouds roiled above the mountain's cracked peak, and somewhere inside that swirling smoke, wings boomed. The oarsmen murmured prayers. Jon kept his eyes fixed on a single terrace where a figure in silver and red waited, the banner of the three-headed dragon snapping behind her like a tongue of flame. Daenerys Targaryen watched him disembark. Sea wind teased her braids, and the morning light caught the subtle white streak near Jon's temple. Remnant of blades and betrayals survived. When his boots met stone, he bowed with the unstudied grace of a man who served only necessity. She inclined her head, a queen acknowledging something rarer than fealty. A peer. "Winter fell behind you," she greeted, voice low as embers. "What brings the North's king south once more?" Jon straightened, meeting her violet gaze. "Winter follows, your grace. I come not only to plead for aid, but to stand beside you when the winds grow colder." A flicker of curiosity, then calculation. "Beside me? As ally? As hand?" he answered, the words heavier than plate. "Let Tyrion counsel as he will. Let Varys weave his whispers. But let me carry your banner into halls of lords who fear ice more than fire. Let me forge the shield that keeps the realm from breaking before the long night." Silence held the terrace. Tyrion emerged from a shadowed archway, brows raised, mouth half open to quip. Yet Daenerys lifted a hand. "Wait." Her eyes searched Jon's, seeking the thin edge between duty and desire. She found only resolve. The quiet, flinty resolve of winter itself. In that moment, possibilities unfurled like wings. "Very well," she said. "Kneel." Jon bent one knee upon the rough volcanic stone still warm beneath morning sun. She drew a simple blade, Valyrian steel, dark ripples chasing starlight, and touched his shoulders. "I name you Lord Snow no longer, but Jon of House Stark Targaryen, hand of the Queen, protector of the realms of men." She sheathed the blade, then offered her hand. He took it, rising into a new name, a new burden, and a new chapter the world would not soon forget. The council chamber inside the stone drum thrummed with restless energies. Obsidian torches cast blood-red flares across a carved table ablaze with continents. Westeros in wood and onyx, seas in polished jet. Grey Worm stood sentinel, spear but grounded like a tree root. Missandei arranged scrolls, her quill seldom still. Varys drifted near louvered windows, catching drafts of gossip on the wind. Tyrion, wine cup swirling, regarded Jon as one might inspect an unexpected card in a losing hand. "You understand," the imp began, "that the hand bears the queen's voice even when it trembles against hers." Jon's gaze never wavered. "The realm cannot afford tremors." "A fine sentiment," Tyrion replied. spoken by men who've not yet tried to steer dragons and lords in the same breath. He sipped. We shall see if winter's steel holds against summer's fury. Plans unfurled. Fleets to be repaired after Euron's depredations. Grain stores to be secured from the Reach. Ravens dispatched northward bearing promises of fire and blood for any lord willing to trade loyalty for life. Jon's counsel cut practical furrows through grand designs. He spoke of supply lines through the neck once white winds froze the sea, of dragonglass mining quotas, of forging spears tipped in obsidian for every able hand from Old Town to the Arbor. Daenerys watched, chin resting on her gloved knuckles. In Jon she glimpsed the unvarnished iron of Eddard Stark and the fire-tempered mercy of Rhaegar, two ghosts braided by fate. Where her blood sang for conquest, his urged fortification. Where her dragons roared for skies, he urged them to guard walls. Differences sparked, but sparks lit torches, and torches lit paths through night. Outside, Regal swept across the sky, shadow spilling over courtyards where Unsullied drilled. Above him, Drogon carved a lazy spiral, fire seeping through nostrils like dawn's first light. Jon felt the thrum of wing beats in his ribs, a rhythm older than thrones. He wondered whether the wolves of Winterfell heard similar heartbeats in distant snow. Ravens carried the news across kingdoms still raw from war. In the Eyrie, little Lord Robert balked at the thought of dragons above his fragile sky doors. At Riverrun, Edmure Tully felt hope pulse again beneath his war-chewed banners. In the far north, Tormund Giantsbane spat snow and declared that if the Dragon Queen's new hand brought bread and steel, the free folk would fight beside him anywhere, even in southern fields that smelled of flowers. Yet not all hearts quickened with hope. In King's Landing, Queen Cersei traced the raven's parchment with a fingernail sharp as spite. She pictured Jon Snow standing at Daenerys' shoulder, her friend once, now threat renewed. Stark honor is a suit of armor, she murmured to Jaime. Clang on the outside, rust hiding within. Every armor cracks. Her green eyes kindled. Find the seam. In the citadel of Old Town, archmesters whispered of portents. A Stark south of the neck beneath dragon wings echoed ancient songs of ice wed to fire. Quills scratched, ink pooled like dark water, but prophecy rarely bled true beneath lantern light. Still, one parchment vanished from a locked alcove, an account of a hidden marriage, forgotten in a dusty year when dragons still shrieked across skies. Weeks became leaves falling upon Dragonstone's courtyards. Jon adopted the rhythms of island life. Dawn strategy sessions, sparring with unsullied captains on a cliff ledge sparking with obsidian sand. Nights bent over charts beside Daenerys as candle wax puddled into pools of gold. Their conversations bled beyond tactics into histories, regrets, aspirations for a realm healed rather than conquered. On cool evenings they walked the ramparts, moonlight painting sea foam silver. At times, quiet stretched comfortable as a fur cloak. At others, unsaid words pressed close like ghosts. Yet neither hurried the reckoning. Winter taught patience, and fire taught tempering. Tyrion noted the changing cadence, the softening edges of stern commands when Daenerys addressed Jon, the half-smile that pulled at Jon's scar when she teased a northern idiom. In quiet, the Hand and the Queen sparked rumors stronger than wildfire. Tyrion stored them like arrows. One day he knew such ammunition might save or end kingdoms. Snow fell early on Dragonstone. Not the thick curtains of storms and winters, but a thin veil, each flake sizzling as it met heated stone. Jon stood upon the terrace where he had been anointed and watched ash-white specks dissolve. A rider approached, the Dothraki scout Jogo, horse sweating despite the chill. "The dead move," he panted, breath steaming. "Eastwatch, fallen." Daenerys joined them, cloak whipping, her jaw set like obsidian. Then the long night begins. Jon's eyes drifted to the horizon where blue-gray sea met sky. Memories of Hardhome stabbed, the silent wall of corpses, the Night King's glare like winter distilled. He turned to her. "We must fly north, both of us. And every rider, every spear. Leave a garrison, but Dragonstone's throne can wait. The realm cannot." Tyrion arrived, breathless, protest poised. King's Landing plotted treachery, abandoning the South emboldened lions. Jon faced him. A realm ruled from ashes is no realm. Fire may vanquish ice, but only if wielded where it strikes. Daenerys listened to them both, internal scales tipping. "Prepare the fleet," she commanded. "Summon allies, and ready the dragons." She met Jon's gaze. "Hand of mine, you lead the vanguard." He inclined his head, not as servant but as equal. The promise that passed between them bore no crown, yet shone brighter than any circlet forged. Rhaegal knelt upon cooling lava flats the next dawn, wings mantled. Jon approached, step steady despite the beast's furnace breath. He rested a palm upon emerald-scaled hide, heat throbbing through leather and flesh. Memories fluttered, of another life perhaps, when dragon lords rode skies before the doom. In that flash, he sensed a wordless recognition, as though bloodlines spiraled across centuries converging here. Rhaegal's eye reflected him. Man, wolf, and something newly born of flame. Daenerys watched, a strange tenderness softening her features. When Rhaegal allowed Jon to mount, she exhaled as if releasing an ancient breath. Drogon roared overhead, fire languid as a waking yawn. As dawn ignited the sea, 2 dragons rose. One black as midnight storm cloud, one green as summer leaves turned ghost-white by frost. Below, ships unfurled sails bearing the red and black sigil. Atop the mainmast snapped a banner newly stitched, the direwolf intertwined with the 3-headed dragon, snouts touching like swords crossed and packed. Throughout the narrow sea voyage north, Jon paced the deck of Seaheart, watching seagulls flick and dive. Each roll of wave carried faces he could not save. Ygritte's laughter under snow-kissed pines, Gren's last stand beneath the wall, the children of Craster abandoned to darkness. Duty thrummed in his chest louder than mast ropes. He caught Daenerys studying him across the deck sometimes, eyes reflecting questions she never voiced. Nights below, the cramped map room smelled of cedar and ink as they plotted contingencies. Evacuation routes for riverland towns, signal fires along the King's Road, caches of dragonglass buried beneath watchtowers. In pauses, silence stretched. Fingers brushed parchment edges yet did not touch flesh. The realm's needs stood sentinel between them. One midnight, the ship lay becalmed under a brittle moon. Daenerys climbed to the forecastle where Jon kept watch. Cloaks snapped. "When this is over," she murmured, gaze on the North Star. "What becomes of kingdom lines and iron thrones?" Jon followed her eyes skyward. Titles melt before fire and freeze under snow. Perhaps when dawn comes, we let the people draw their own borders. She smiled, a glimmer, fleeting. A ruler who would erase his own crown. A ruler who would free himself of it, he replied, meeting her gaze. In that hush hung the outline of a future neither dared paint in full, yet both could almost breathe. Footfalls interrupted. The night watch reporting northern lights flickering far off, pale blue dancing like souls lost. Daenerys and Jon shared a glance. Omen or warning, or both. Eastwatch by the sea lay in ruins. Stones blackened, ice shards like spears jutted from shattered ramparts. Fires guttered, naked underworld sky gaping where the wall's great spine had split. Survivors staggered like shades among corpses already stiffening. Jon dismounted, boots crunching frost over blood. His breath plumed but his heart beat calm. Battle calm, the hush before storms. Sansa had sent forces. Armored spearmen under House Manderly banners, archers in wolf-gray cloaks, wildlings bearing weirwood branch tattoos. Lady Brienne led a vanguard, Oathkeeper glowing faintly red in torchlight. When Jon clasped her forearm, relief softened her austere features. "We feared you lost to dragonfire and southern schemes," she said. He shook his head. "Only forged anew." Daenerys descended from Drogon's shoulder, cloak billowing like spilt ink. The northern host fell silent, some awe, some fear. The queen strode among them, a living banner of promise. She knelt by a dying ranger who whispered of shadows with blue eyes. She touched his brow, her fingers came away crimson. "I will not let your death be wasted," she promised. The ranger smiled with cracked lips before falling still. Tyrion arrived, leading supply wagons. Grey Worm directed Unsullied to shore up breaches. Plans spun. Dragonglass forges in Winterfell's crypt tunnels. Watchfires spaced from Last Hearth to White Harbor. Ravens bearing new sigils. Dragon entwined with wolf. Word spread across campfires, and in the hush after each tale, men and women looked northward, to the unseen dark. That dark did not wait long. Night came brutal and white. First, wind keened like steel across stone. Then snow hissed in spirals, cloaking torches in ghostly halos. Out of that swirling veil emerged the dead silent, relentless, eyes like shattered sapphires. Shields locked, spears bristled, archers loosed. Obsidian arrows hissed, felling wights with swift finality. Yet numbers pressed endless. Jon carved a path through the scrum, Longclaw screaming with each strike, Valyrian steel singing hunger. Beside him Grey Worm danced, spear flicking lethal arcs. Behind, Brienne and Podrick anchored the line. Above, Drogon shrieked firestorms, snow turning to steam. Yet each time corpse ash drifted, more forms rose. Rhaegal banked, Jon's grip white-knuckled around saddle spines. He drove the dragon low, flame shearing a swath through ranks of the dead. Across the field, the Night King himself raised a frost-rimmed hand. The ground split, fresh cadavers clawed free, fallen brothers, mothers, children, their faces twisted memory against the living. Dread coiled in Jon's gut, how to win a war where every casualty swelled the foe. But then Daenerys' voice boomed, not with words but with the thunder of Drogon's full fury. Blue flame met red in the storm-churned sky. Drogon and Rhaegal circled, weaving a braid of fire and frost shatter above the turmoil. Below, men rallied, eyes lifted to dragons like prayers given wing. On a ridge of broken ice, Jon dismounted Rhaegal and faced the Night King atop a frozen rise. Silence engulfed the battlefield, as though the world inhaled. Crystal spear met Valyrian steel. They clashed in echoing sparks, each blow ringing across eternity. Jon's muscles burned. The Night King's gaze remained dead calm, patient as creeping ice. In a heartbeat of distraction, an arrow streaking past, Jon faltered. The spear punched toward his heart, but another blade intercepted, a slender Valyrian dagger wielded by Daenerys, who had landed Drogon behind them. The icy spear cracked against the dagger's ancient magic. Dragonfire roared as Drogon exhaled point-blank. The Night King staggered, frost armor liquefying, yet still he stood, spear reforming from swirling snow. Jon surged, slashing. Steel met rib ice, cracks spidered. Daenerys' dagger pierced through, driven by fury born of sons lost and futures unborn. The Night King's eyes widened, not with fear, but with final comprehension. He shattered, shards scattering like glass in wind. In that instant, wights collapsed lifeless. Silence fell so sudden ears rang. Snow drifted over corpses now forever still. A cheer rose, ragged, then roaring, a sound to shake skies. Jon and Daenerys stood amidst ruin, breaths mingling steam, blood and frost glazing their cheeks. They met each other's gaze, and something vast and fragile passed between. Not victory, but the ground upon which victory might grow. Dawn bled rose gold across the frozen shore. Survivors walked among pyres, laying to rest friend and foe both. Jon traced names into memory, each syllable a stone upon the cairn of his soul. Daenerys moved among the wounded, her cloak a banner of comfort. When the last body burned, black smoke curling into a sky finally clearing, she turned to Jon. "The dead are done," she whispered, "but the living still quarrel over chairs." Jon nodded, weary but unbroken. "Then let us teach them a new game." Together they gazed south, where Cersei Lannister brooded behind red walls, where hunger gnawed villages stripped by war, where fear nested in hearts who had not seen the devil that nearly claimed them all. The task ahead loomed taller than any wall. To melt centuries of grievance, to raise houses from rubble, to weave realms into one cloth strong enough to weather storms not yet born. Jon offered his arm. Daenerys took it. Around them, snowmelt trickled, carving rivulets through soot and ash, tiny rivers seeking sea. Far above, Drogon and Regal wheeled, shadows twined, two dragons tracing the shape of infinity across a newborn sky. And so began the long dawn. Yet dawns can stretch long hours before the sun truly rises. Ravens sped with news, but men shape truths to suit envies. In the Rock, Euron Greyjoy laughed at word of the Night King's fall, plotting raids upon half-manned fleets. In Dorne, young Lady Arryn weighed alliance with dragons against the promise of an independent son. Across the sea in Pentos, the Golden Company revised their contracts, their famed elephant banners tasting profit on shifting winds. In Winterfell, Sansa stood upon the battlements, Raven scroll loosened in her gloved fist. The direwolf dragon's sigil fluttering atop Dragonstone recalled distant songs of Lyanna's dances and Rhaegar's tragedies. She breathed deep, setting fears aside. If Jon steered the Dragon Queen's court, then the North must navigate a world where ice had melted into rain, and wolves learned to run alongside flame. She penned a reply: measured support, conditions clear, autonomy in northern law, respect for old gods' groves, reparation for castles razed. Her words crossed leagues swift as hawks. In Dragonstone's hall, Jon read them by hearthlight, a smile ghosting his lips. He set quill to parchment, writing not as monarch to subject, but as brother to sister, acknowledging wounds yet unhealed and paths forward lined with trust. Daenerys watched from shadows, understanding the delicate weave of family and crown. Later, she and Jon stood before the painted table, candlelight dancing across carved hills. They traced supply lines, garrisons, alliances yet forged. But their fingers brushed, lingered. In that brief stillness, all maps fell away, leaving only two souls battered by cold and fire, finding warmth in rare quiet. Jon cleared his throat, stepping back. When peace is won, what will you do? She considered. Teach dragons to sleep in peace. Walk gardens without an escort. Perhaps learn to laugh at jests before they sour. And you? He looked to the horizon, bleeding lavender. I was born with duty for marrow. Perhaps I will plant trees I will never sit beneath and call that enough. She touched his arm. Trees can grow in volcanic soil, given time. He turned, meeting her gaze, a smile deepening lines earned in snow and fire.
En we day best start planting.
On the morrow, they sailed for King's Landing, a coalition fleet creaking beneath banners the world had never seen. The sea route glittered, but treachery stirred beneath those waves. Qyburn scorpions hidden on rocky spits, wildfire caches secreted under helpless districts. Within the Red Keep, Cersei forged pacts with Sel's words, promises written in crimson ink. Jaime watched her, love souring to dread, yet still his oaths chained tight. In the quiet of Jon's cabin aboard Seaheart, torchlight painted his features bronze. He sharpened long claw, each scrape against whetstone a heartbeat. Daenerys knocked, entered. She carried no crown, only a rolled parchment. From Samwell, she said. He and Gilly found something in the vaults of the Citadel. Proof of your parentage, Jon. He stilled. The whetstone stilled. In candle shadows, old truths shifted. I know enough of who I am, he replied. Yet his voice roughened, as though wind blew through cracks newly formed. She set the scroll beside the blade. Names matter to thrones, not to hearts. But I would have you know all that shapes you. He nodded. After the war. After the war, she echoed, though worry etched her brow. She turned to leave, but paused at the door. If thrones divide us, we will forge one of our own. Then she slipped into corridor gloom, footsteps quiet as falling ash. Jon exhaled. The cabin seemed suddenly too small for secrets and futures both. He unrolled Sam's scroll, eyes roaming lines inked with trembling urgency. Words leapt. Rhaegar, annulment. Lyanna, legitimate issue. The candle's flame bent in a sudden draft, as though the ship itself shuddered under the weight of revelations. He folded the parchment, sliding it beneath his breastplate. Outside, waves slapped hull planks, steady as a heartbeat. Destiny shifted on those tides, but duty remained its rudder. He sheathed Longclaw and stepped onto the deck, wind knifing through his cloak. Far to starboard, Regal soared in moon-soaked arcs, as though sensing the storm ahead. Jon braced against the rail and stared south where war awaited like a coiled viper. Somewhere beyond that horizon, thrones of iron and lions of gold, debts of blood and crowns of ash, and the fragile hope that wolves and dragons together might break the wheel fate kept forging. He gripped the rail until knuckles ached, then let the sea spray wash over him, cold and bracing, as dawn's first blush gilded the far edge of the world. Thus the tale assumed its slow unfurling, caught between breaths of dragons and wolves, between the ashes of an old darkness and the kindling of a dawn not yet secure. 5 hours would scarcely hold it. 5 lifetimes might barely see its embers cool. Yet in that narrowing space where night ceded to reluctant morning, 2 souls, ice-tempered and fire-forged, stood ready to stake all crowns, all names, upon the fragile dream of a realm forged not by conquest, but by covenant. And somewhere high above, dragons wheeled, etching spirals of hope against a sky outliving all kings. Rain fell over Blackwater Bay like sluiced steel, each droplet a cold needle stitching sea to sky. From the quarterdeck of Seaheart, Jon watched the bronze haze of kings landing resolve through veils of drizzle. The city's walls, once pale limestone, now bore soot scars, and half-mended merlins jutted like broken teeth. Above them, iron scorpions waited, dark silhouettes quivering against pewter clouds. Their barbed bolts tracked every black sail, every flapping banner sewn with the entwined wolf and dragon. The fleet moved at a funeral pace, oars muffled beneath oil-soaked wool. Davos steered beside the helmsman, gray beard slicked to his throat. "Tides against us," he muttered, eyes squinting at eddies swirling past red-wine hulks stripped from Euron last moon. Like the city itself. Jon nodded, rain streaming down his brow. Behind him, Regal skimmed the chop, powerful wings flattening the sea into glass with each downward sweep. Drogon circled higher, a storm crow painted in midnight and flame, his roar vibrating rigging ropes. Jon sensed the sailors flinch when the shadow passed. The memory of Hardhome still knotted in their minds, but resolve held them fast. The living had tasted a deeper fear. Wooden walls and iron quarrels felt small beside the Night King's hush. On the effortlessly, Tyrion leaned over the rail, goblet abandoned for once, eyes sharp beneath dripping curls. "Scorpions there, and on the parapet of Maegor's holdfast," he murmured, pointing. "Cersei's filled every gap Qyburn could find with bolt throwers. And Wildfire, gods, Jon, she's mined her own streets." Jon's gaze traced the waterfront. Random chimneys smoked green, tests perhaps, or leaks the alchemists could no longer plug. "We take the city with minimal flame," he said. "Small folk live beneath those roofs." Tyrion's laugh tasted of ash. "My sister makes pawns of them. She is counting on your mercy. Then we'll turn her count against her." Evening spread bruised lilac over the encampments east of the city. The Targaryen host had chosen the charred fields of the Blackwater Rush Delta, ground churned by Stannis a lifetime ago, to raise its bright labyrinth of pavilions. Obsidian forges glowed orange between rows of unsullied tents. The hammer ring carried over the whisper of river reeds. Beyond, a ragged semicircle of northern cookfires burned blue with driftwood salt. Dothraki horses stamped in the mud, uneasy so near water. In the largest pavilion, canvas dyed deep blood, Daenerys stood over the painted table newly shipped from Dragonstone. Wax had filled the old cracks. Inked troop markers glinted like beetle shells. Torchlight bronzed her cheekbones. Jon entered with rain still dripping from his hair. She looked up, slow smile softening the war map's brutal geometry. "You saw the scorpions," she said, not a question. He set wet gloves on a stool. "A forest of them, and wildfire pits beneath the poorest districts." Her fingers rested on the tiny model of the Red Keep. "I could end it in a night," she whispered. 2 passes of Drogon, 1 of Regal, but ash would choke every alley. Jon closed the gap between them until the table's edge pressed his belt. We win hearts or we rule embers. She studied him, violet eyes reflecting torch flame. Then we need blades in shadows. He nodded. Grey Worm has volunteers, and I know a ghost who slips walls no man sees. Ghost? She echoed, a sister raised on silence. He tapped the map south of the mud gate. If Arya Stark can reach the gatehouse and lift the portcullis, Unsullied can swarm under the scorpions before the crews reload. Daenerys considered. Right her. We still have ravens. Jon's eyes dipped to her hand resting near his. Gently, he brushed knuckles still chilled from the march north. She did not flinch. Instead, she turned her palm upward, weaving her fingers through his. Torches crackled. Beyond the thin canvas walls, the host rustled like a restless tide. For a heartbeat, all wars hushed. You carry the realm on your shoulders, she murmured. I feel lighter sharing the load, he answered. They parted only when Grey Worm's crisp voice announced the arrival of scouts. Duty reasserted its spine between them, but warmth lingered like emberglow beneath iron. Night deepened across King's Landing, rain tapering to mist. In the Red Keep's Tower of the Hand, long since commandeered by Qyburn, Queen Cersei stood before a window, palms pressed to cold glass. Below, torches bobbed along the city's inner walls, each flame a trembling star in fog. Jaime leaned against a marble pillar behind her, gold hand catching moonlight. They camp but do not strike, he observed. They hope to starve us, Cersei answered, gaze distant. Let them learn my coffers outlast winter's patience. Jaime frowned. Coffers cannot feed small folk. They already riot for bread. Cersei turned, silk skirt swishing. Bread or blood, dear brother. Fear feeds longer. Qyburn glided from the shadows, parchment crackling. Your Grace, word from Euron. The silence lurks near Massey's Hook, awaiting your sign. And our latest trial succeeded. Jaime stiffened. What trial? The maester's pale eyes glittered. A dragon's lung collapses under naphtaglass fleshettes. Enough struck in concert will ground even the great black one. Cersei's smile was a razor. Then we wait until they commit both beasts. We cut one wing, break the other. Jaime pushed off the pillar. And if wildfire caches ignite, the city will burn from beneath. Then ashes also belong to the crown, she hissed. Better a pyre than a leash. Jaime met her stare, searching for the sister he once knew. He found only the red reflection of ambition. Without another word, he bowed and left, footsteps echoing down a corridor lined with dead kings. 2 nights later, on a moonless tide, a narrow boat slipped beneath the city's southern quay. Waves lapped barnacled pilings thick with seaweed stink. In the prow, Arya Stark crouched in oil-black leathers, hair braided tight, face soot-smeared. Gendry rowed with silent strokes. Davos guided from the stern, low voice murmuring currents and watch rotations. Arya gazed up the sheer stone of the river wall. Halfway, an old drainage grate yawned iron-toothed. This is it, Davos whispered. Leads to unused storm drains under the dragon pit. Showed it to your father once, years ago, smuggling onions. Arya grinned, teeth white in shadow. Father never mentioned. He had other worries. Davos steadied the boat whilst Gendry wedged iron hooks between corroded bars. With a hiss, the grate pried inward. Cold air wafted from darkness smelling of rust and forgotten bones. 7 hells, Gendry muttered. Arya kissed him quick. Hold the tide for me. She slipped through the gap and vanished. Inside, the drain sloped upward, ankle-deep in stagnant water. She padded soundless, guided by faint memory of catacomb sketches Sam once showed her in Winterfell's solar. Torch glow flickered ahead. 2 Lannister guards slouching at a junction, dice clacking between them. Arya drew the Valyrian dagger now named Catsbane. A heartbeat later, dice scattered across stone, pips still spinning beside cooling throats. She scaled a service ladder into a forgotten vestibule beneath the old sept bells. Cobwebs draped cracked pews, the rubble of faith unswept since Cersei's green trial. Beyond, a spiral stair ascended toward the gatehouse. Arya climbed, counting heartbeats. 1, 2, breathing slow, 3. Clack. A boot scraped above. She froze. Lantern light haloed the opening. A scorpion loader emerged, humming a Dornish love song off-key. He turned, eyes widening as shadow detached from stairwell and steel kissed his spine. He sank without a sound. Arya crept onto the battlements. Rain had returned, masking footfalls beneath its whisper. She ducked behind winch gears taller than horses, scanning. 2 more crews tended quarrels. A third pair oiled the chain raising the portcullis. She pulled 3 obsidian-tipped arrows from her quiver, knocked the first. The string thrummed thrice, 2 bolts in throats, 1 in a lantern's glass. Darkness swallowed the parapet. She sprinted, knives singing, cutting the chainkeeper's life before his scream. Grasping the iron lever, she heaved. The mechanism groaned, resisted, then lurched. Below, the mud gate's jaws yawned. River stench wafted up as fresh wind. Trumpets blared from the eastern camps. Unsullied columns surged, shields hammered in unison. Across parapets, alarm gongs clamored. Arya leapt from the archway, tucking into a roll on slick tiles, then sprinted for a rope Gendry had fixed to the outer wall. She rappelled down as first scorpion bolts whined overhead, splintering into shadows where she'd been heartbeats before. Grey Worm's vanguard poured through the open gate like silver water. Shield wall formed, spears bristling. From alleys sprang goldcloaks half-armed, startled from drink. Northern archers loosed from rooftops, fletchings hissing crimson paths. Jon led the second wave astride a black courser, Longclaw raised. His cloak clung rain-heavy, his breath fogging inside helm. Ghost loped beside, white fur-streaked mud. Behind came wildling berserkers wielding axes of weirwood and obsidian, roaring "Free folk!" as they carved into shield lines. On the parapets, scorpion crews scrambled to swing beams but found gears jammed with strange, sticky resin Arya had carried in clay vials. Sap from the strangler vine Davos had harvested on Lys once. Wheels stuck fast. Cables snapped like harp strings under tension. A thunderclap rent the sky. Drogon diving, wings folding, flame belching across an empty courtyard to shatter a hastily deployed catapult. Rhaegal followed, green fire wreathed in white rain, yet both dragons veered high before licking inhabited streets. Inside her map tent, Daenerys listened to runner reports, tension coiled in her shoulders. When word arrived that the mud gate held, she exhaled. Yet a second raven spoke of Euron's fleet slipping upriver on flood tide. She strode to Drogon's saddle. "Yora," she called. The night stood gray in dawn's first pale light. "You guard the Queen's counsel." He bowed, though worry lined his brow. "Return in flame, Khaleesi." She kicked Drogon skyward, rain shearing off scales in steaming sheets. The black water glimmered with torch reflections. Upriver, a dozen black sails approached. Euron's flagship prowled foremost, gilded kraken looming. Daenerys guided Drogon low over the water, wings hammering troughs. With a command in Valyrian, Drogon loosed a cone of fire that turned surface rain to vapor, scorching the Silence's mainmast. Yet as flames roared, scorpion bolts fired from hidden ballast towers along the riverbank. Weapons Qyburn had concealed beneath canvas and reeds. One bolt glanced Drogon's shoulder. Another streaked past Daenerys's cheek hot as forge breath. She banked hard. From clouds above, Rhaegal screeched, Jon guiding with knees firm against scale. He dove, jaws gaping. A torrent of fire engulfed one tower, stones exploding outward. A scorpion bolt arced upward, catching his flank. Rhaegal shrieked but stayed aloft. Jon tightened grip, heart hammering. He felt the dragon's pain as his own, a hot lance beneath ribs. "Stay with me, boy," he whispered. Below, the Silence's deck erupted in chaos. Euron howled laughter, axe raised. He dragged a giant scorpion from tarp, swiveling toward Drogon, climbing for another pass. Daenerys urged her mount straight into the bolt's path, then at the last instant folded wings. Drogon dropped, missing the bolt by inches, tail lashing through sailcloth. Fire burst from his throat, washing the deck. Euron leapt into the river, armor smoking, screams echoing as his men burned. The silence drifted aflame until its powder stores ignited in a roar that flattened smaller craft nearby. With the river's threat dying, Daenerys wheeled toward the city. Flames guttered along the mud gate ramp where Jon's troops pressed deeper. She scanned for Jon and spotted Rhaegal laboring near Maegor's holdfast, blood speckling scales. She urged Drogon to his side. Jon watched her approach, eyes fierce yet relieved. He pointed east, a cluster of houses where gold cloaks rallied civilians into shields. Daenerys nodded grim. She banked Drogon, but directed his fire narrowly, cutting only the armored line, leaving thatched roofs steaming but unlit. Small folk shrank away, terror and awe mingling on wet faces. A child pointed skyward, whispering Dragonwolf, as though a new constellation. In the Red Keep's forecourt, Lannister archers formed ranks. Jaime rode through them, cloak sodden. "Stand down," he barked. "The Queen's orders have changed." They stared, uncertain. Above, Scorpion crews sought targets through smoke. Jaime's horse reared as a bolt shrieked past, slamming into crenellations. He spurred for the throne room. Inside, he found Cersei pacing before the Iron Throne, wildfire lamp in hand. "The city is lost," he said. She pivoted, eyes wide with something like ecstasy. "Not yet." She lifted the lamp, flame trembling green. "I light the vault beneath Aegon's high hill. The dragon succumbs to ashes, and our enemies choke on victory." Jaime stepped forward. "You'll kill thousands. Thousands die each day for less." He reached, gold hand open. "Give me the lamp." Her jaw clenched. "You swore to protect your queen." "I swore to protect the living." Cersei's cheeks flushed crimson. "You would betray me again." Tears welled but did not fall. With sudden motion, she hurled the lamp at the throne's base. Jaime lunged, catching it between real hand and gold. Wick sputtered, but flame held. He set it on the marble, voice shaking. "Enough!" Cersei backed toward the Iron Throne steps. "You know what they'll do to me. I know what you'll do to yourself." He advanced slowly. "Come with me. We'll leave the city. Stand trial in Winterfell if nowhere else." Sansa Stark's mercy is harsh but honest. She laughed, brittle. "Mercy?" She glanced at the jagged shadows of blades forming the throne. "There is only power." Suddenly she snatched a dagger from her girdle, lunging. Jaime caught her wrist. They grappled, siblings locked in tragic silhouette. At last the dagger clattered.
Cersei saget, tiers striking kol.
Outside, the throne room doors burst open. Unsullied poured in, spears leveled. Grey Worm's helm glistened green with reflected wildfire light. Jaime raised empty hands. "The Queen surrenders." Cersei's gaze burned poison. "I do not." But unsullied shackles snapped tight. Rain tapered to drizzle as dawn's first ash pink smeared the horizon. Bells tolled, half broken, some still melted from wildfire 3 years past. Their discordant clang resounded along streets where small folk stumbled from cellars, blinking at columns of unsullied guiding Lannister soldiers to pens outside the Gate of the Gods. Northern banners unfurled from battlements. Direwolf entwined with dragon, crimson on one side, snow-gray on the other. Jon stood in the plaza before Baelor September's scorched foundation, armor dented, cloak hacked by blades. Blood streaked his cheek, others' blood. Rhaegal rested behind him, wing drooping but eyes bright. Daenerys dismounted Drogon, meeting Jon's gaze over the hush of thousands. They faced the crowd. Shopkeepers clutching children, septas with torn veils, smiths still gripping hammers. Fear glittered in every eye. Jon stepped forward, voice low yet carrying. "The fight for life is won. The fight for peace begins." A murmur swept. Then a child, a girl in soot-streaked rags, walked forward, offering Jon a wilted rose. He knelt, accepted it. Daenerys watched, throat tight. The crowd's fear ebbed, replaced by cautious hope. Tyrion approached, chains hanging from his belt, trophies unlocked from prisoners unwilling to kneel. "Your Grace, hand," he said, uncertain which title now bespoke which soul. "The Red Keep is secure. Cersei proclaims no surrender, but she is caged." Jon glanced to Daenerys. She nodded. "A trial public, by the laws of kings and commons both." Tyrion's brows rose. "Mercy in daylight. The realm will remember." "Let it remember justice, too," Jon replied. 3 days passed beneath uneasy truce. Refugees poured from city gates searching for camp bread. Northern healers tended them, while Dothraki patrolled markets they once dreamed of plundering. Dragons cleaved air in wide loops, a living reminder that new laws wore scales. In the shattered courtyard of the Dragon Pit, Jon met Sansa. She arrived under escort, riding a gray mare, cloak spun with weirwood leaves. When she dismounted, brother and sister held each other long, their armor clacking softly. "You move quicker than ravens," Jon whispered. "And trust fewer wings," she replied, surveying the ruined pit where dragons once chained shrieked away their minds. She eyed regal sunning on cracked marble. "A free dragon is better." Jon smiled. "Free, but wounded." Sansa's gaze shifted to Daenerys striding across the yard, silver braids gleaming. The queen dipped her head. "Lady Sansa." Sansa curtsied stiffly. "Your Grace." Her eyes flicked to Jon, then back. "We've matters of governance. The North expects self-rule." Daenerys breathed deep. "When people unite in peace, crowns weigh less. The North shall choose its own laws, so long as they do not threaten the realm's peace." Sansa nodded, surprised perhaps by the quick accord. "Then Winterfell stands ready to trade grain for southern steel." Jon exhaled, tension easing. One realm, many fires. Tyrion found Jaime on a balcony overlooking the bay, empty wineskin dangling. The Kingslayer leaned on the stone balustrade, gold hand shining. Below, sailors dismantled scorpions, tossing splintered beams into lime kills. "Thought you'd flee," Tyrion said. Jaime did not look up. "Where to?" "All that's come due." Tyrion joined him, surveying the city. "Cersei's trial begins tomorrow. Word is she will claim wildfire was a last defense, not offense." Jaime's laugh was low, pained. "She'll hang before yielding pride." "Perhaps," Tyrion admitted, "but her fate isn't why I came." He produced a small leather pouch inside a gold lion brooch, once hands, now redundant. "For you, a keepsake." Jaime accepted, thumb brushing the lion's mane. He closed his fist. "I killed a king to save a city, nearly killed a queen to save a sister. When does the ledger balance?" Tyrion offered a wan smile. "When we stop adding columns." Night before the trial, Jon could not sleep. He roamed the silent corridors of Maegor's Holdfast, remembering darker nights when specters walked Winterfell's halls. In a disused solar, he found Varys bent over parchment, candles dwindling. The spider looked up, expression unreadable. "Your true name spreads like wildfire in dry grass." Jon stiffened. "I am Jon Snow. You are Aegon Targaryen, 6th of his name, born to Rhaegar and Lyanna, heir by all laws." Varys folded the parchment. "The realm may prefer ice tempered by fire to fire alone." Jon's fists clenched. "We just bled to break one throne. I've no wish to claim another." "Intent matters little to rumor," Varys said gently. "Be ready. Some lords gather signatures already." Jon turned away, heart thundering. Outside, moonlight bathed the courtyard where Unsullied drilled. Daenerys stood atop the battlement, cloak fluttering. He joined her. She spoke first. "He told you." Jon nodded. "I never sought this. The realm needs one crown, not quarreling kin." Daenerys's eyes shimmered. "And if the realm asks for you, I'll tell them the truth. Fire alone did not save them. We did. Together." She exhaled, relief and grief entwined. Softly, She placed her hand over his chest. "Then let them see us stand so." He covered her hand with his. Dawn's first gold edged the city. Bells lay silent, awaiting judgment. Tomorrow might crown peace or ignite civil war. But in that fragile hour, high on broken walls, Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen watched the sun rise together. Two silhouettes cut from same dawn, casting one shadow long and interwoven across the waking world. The morning of Cersei's trial dawned beneath a sky the color of smoked glass. Fog from the Blackwater curled around King's Landing's lower tiers, muting the clatter of carts and the mutter of gawkers choking the narrow lanes. Within the Red Keep's outer ward, a forest of pikes created a living corridor for dignitaries to pass. Bronze-tipped spears of Dothraki, polished ash of northern levies, slender steel of the Unsullied, an uneasy braid of conquerors and defenders now fused by victory's fragile gold. Rainwater flecked every helm, each drop catching dawn's pale flame like 1,000 trembling stars. Jon stood at the corridor's head beside Grey Worm, cloak sodden, hair newly trimmed yet still too wild for most southern courts. Longclaw rested sheathed, but its wolf pommel glared at all who dared meet its black iron eyes. He felt the hush of the crowd ripple when Jaime Lannister emerged escorting his sister. Cersei wore a plain gray gown cinched by a chain of thin silver. No crown sat upon her chopped hair. Shackles bound her wrists, yet she kept her chin high, amber gaze sweeping the assembly with almost tender contempt, as if they were players in a farce only she could appreciate. Behind Jon, Sansa watched, face impassive. Beside her, Tyrion hovered like a shadow from another life, velvet doublet soaked darker at the shoulders. Between them stood Daenerys in crimson and black, cloak lined with silver fox. She gave no order, spoke no word, but her stillness radiated authority stronger than the forged iron of the throne room awaiting beyond. The procession began its slow march across wet flagstones echoing with the measured strike of unsullied sandals. Onlookers pressed behind rope lines, fishmongers in patched cloaks, Sellsword veterans, highborn ladies clinging to lavender kerchiefs, septons clutching pendants of 7-pointed stars. Some spat at Cersei's hem. Others, remembering the bread she once provided, murmured prayers for mercy. A baker flung a loaf that struck her shoulder and crumbled to soggy crusts. She barely blinked. Inside the great hall, torches smoked against tapestries ruined by years of flame and neglect. The Iron Throne loomed upon its dais, blades slick with condensation. But another chair stood before it, simple wood draped in crimson cloth for Daenerys, who refused to preside from a seat forged of subjugation. She mounted the dais and turned, her expression neither stern nor kind, only fixed in unassailable calm. Jon took the place at her right, Tyrion at her left, with Varys just beyond, as though three differing minds formed one lattice of judgment. Cersei was guided to a stone plinth. Jaime stepped back, his face carved from remorse. The hall settled, 800 beating hearts somehow sinking until silence roared louder than thunder. A maester cleared his throat, scroll trembling. "Cersei of House Lannister, you stand accused of treason, murder, kinslaying, use of forbidden wildfire, and the willful slaughter of innocents. How do you?" "I stand accused," she interrupted, voice a cool blade gliding through air. "But I do not stand alone. Every monarch in this hall bears a ledger inked red." She fixed her gaze on Daenerys. "Some burned old cities to ash. Some broke oaths sworn before gods. Yet the lioness alone is caged." A murmur rippled. Daenerys lifted her hand, and sound died. "Your trial is not a tally of sins beyond these walls. Answer the charge." "I am guilty," Cersei said, and a collective gasp fluttered from benches. She allowed the pause to linger, grin faint. "Guilty of loving my children, of defending them with every claw. Guilty of defending this city from faith fanatics, foreign invaders, and a brother who thought honor sweeter than family. If that is treason, then my life is well spent." Tyrion stepped forward. "You ignited wildfire beneath civilians you professed to rule, blew sept and sparrow alike to dust, plotted to unleash the same green death upon them again. That is not defense, it is annihilation. Cersei's eyes gleamed. I would burn 10 cities before bending to foreign dragons. Her gaze shifted to Jon. Or to a snowborn boy who forgot the North's first law. Never trust southern crowns. Jon's jaw flexed, but he remained silent. Instead, Daenerys rose, the crimson cloth falling in ripples that resembled slow flames. The realm must heal. Justice is its first stitch. This throne, she touched the hilt of a protruding sword, cannot be washed clean until truth and penalty walk hand in hand. She turned to the gallery where lords of every reach sat. Yohn Royce in black iron, Glover in pine green, Hightower in white and gold, Prince Quentyn Martell newly arrived from Sunspear in burnished copper. We ask this council to judge, not with vengeance, but with the memory of what unbridled power can cost. The lords conferred in huddled whispers. Royce cleared his throat. The Lady of House Lannister may face death or exile. Exile risks rebellion. Death risks martyrdom. We propose imprisonment for life. Her lands and gold stripped. Her line disinherited. Her person confined to the Silent Sisters' cloisters. Cersei's smile faltered. You would bury me alive in gray cloth, she hissed. Quentyn Martell rose, sun-shaped badge catching torchlight. Your crimes cry louder than stone cells. Yet I, whose family burned in your father's courts, say this. The realm requires an end to blood feud. Let the lioness live, but let her roar no more. Daenerys studied the room, the weight of voices pressing into her ribs. Then she spoke, each word measured. So be it. Cersei Lannister, you are stripped of all titles, lands, and claims. You shall spend your remaining days cloistered in silent penance within the last light convent atop the cliffs of Casterly. You will write your crimes each dawn and chant the names of the dead until dusk. May you find the mercy you denied others. Cersei swayed but did not collapse. She met Daenerys' eyes with a flicker of grudging respect. Then unsullied led her away, footsteps soft as regrets across marble. When the doors shut, a collective breath exhaled, as though walls themselves relaxed their clenched fists. Daenerys Saturday, the war for thrones is ended. The war for peace begins anew each morning. Let us begin. That very afternoon, the new small council convened in a chamber once used for storing wildfire, a deliberate cleansing. Windows opened to salt air. Smoke-stained stones were scrubbed and strewn with fresh rushes of mint. Around a low oak table sat Jon, Daenerys, Tyrion, Sansa, Varys, Brienne, and Davos. Gendry leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, forging hammer still at his belt. No longer a bastard in King's Row, but Lord of Storm's End by both Queen and Northern acclaim. Maps unfurled, quills scraped, candles guttered. Grain stores, river trade, surviving levies, plague risk, all piled into discussion. But the heart of the meeting beat around one question: how to govern a realm stitched from fracturing banners. Varys began, voice silken. 7 kingdoms once. But 3 centuries have aged them into 10,000 different hearts. Central rule alone gathers resentment like manure gathers flies. Sansa nodded. The North will not yield its laws again, nor should Dorne or the Iron Islands. We must weave a tapestry, not forge another leash. Tyrion drummed fingers. A great council, then. Each region, North, Vale, Riverlands, West, Reach, Storm, Crownlands, Dorne, Iron Isles, elects a steward. Stewards choose a king or queen for 7-year terms. He sipped water, wincing at its blandness versus wine. Monarchy tempered by selection. And if the chosen fails, the council has authority to depose. Daenerys listened. Would this not birth ceaseless intrigue? Better intrigue of ballots than of blades, Sansa said. Jon leaned back. What matters more is bread in bellies and peace on roads. Crown shapes policy, yes, but people taste coin and grain. Brienne cleared her throat. Knighthood decays under broken pledges. Reforms should bind lords to serve small folk as earnestly as banners. Davos chuckled. Spoken like a true knight. We'll need chartered courts for small folk grievances. Maybe traveling tribunals, 3 judges. 1 knight, 1 septon, 1 small folk chosen by lot. Daenerys' eyes brightened. A wheel with many spokes bears weight evenly. Her gaze fell on Jon. Would the realm approve of two rulers? One born of dragon, one of wolf. A hush settled. Jon met her eyes, memories of the night before flickering. Quiet laughter over stale bread, fingers grazing parchment edges, the warmth of firelight on her cheek. Then he glanced at Sansa, whose expression was thoughtful but unreadable. It could, he said slowly, if it trusts them. Tyrion hid a smile behind goblet. A union, perhaps? Not of matrimony alone, but of charter. Co-sovereigns bound by council oversight. Daenerys extended her palm, not as queen to subject but partner to partner. If we stand together, no region stands alone. Jon placed his hand atop hers, rough calluses brushing her silken skin. We stand, then. No herald blew trumpets, no maesters dipped quills in ornate ink. But in that farmhouse plain gesture, a new dawn cracked the horizon of an old world. Outside, construction crews swarmed the city like ants over a fallen feast. Rotted timbers pulled from collapsed homes were stacked for kindling. Broken stones relayed to mend roadbeds. River barges unloaded grain from the reach under escort of northern pikemen. Regal rested upon the ruined Sept Hill, wing-bound in stitched leather treated with maester bombs, each breath slow but steady. Children dared nearer each day, flinging twisted iron soldiers and apple cores as offerings. The dragon's nostrils huffed steam-warm gusts that sent them squealing, but always in laughter, never fear. Ghost patrolled alleys, a silent white wraith whose presence discouraged would-be looters. Thieves who once melted into labyrinthine streets now found spectral jaws a step behind. Rumor claimed the direwolf answered only to the dragonwolf hand. Both names whispered as one, as though Jon had become a creature of myth as potent as any beast. In the evenings, Jon walked those same streets. Gendry often joined, pointing to smithies he'd rebuild, forges he'd ignite. One dusk, they found Arya atop the city wall, boots dangling over sheer drop to the dry moat. "Leaving?" Jon asked. She shrugged. "I've read enough stories. Time to write my own." Gendry's face tightened. "Can't write them here?" Arya smiled, brushing knuckles against his. "Storm's End needs forging. I need west winds and unknown sands." She rose, kissed him soft, and vanished into gloom before either could protest. Word of the North Dragon Compact, so rumors styled Jon and Daenerys' budding rule, spread faster than ravens. In Old Town, archmesters debated parchment scraps allegedly stolen from Rhaegar's annulment records. Some argued spurious forgery, others hailed proof. The High Septon, newly appointed by Daenerys with the blessing of smallfolk, preached reconciliation, that the father of all kings looked kindly on rulers sharing burden rather than grasping alone. In Sunspear, Princess Aerion, still grappling with cousin Quentin's surprising deference, sent sand skiffs laden with carved azurite to decorate the new houses of Healing Rising where the September once stood. But not all hearts swayed. In the Isles, Lady Yara balled fists upon learning Cersei lived. "My brother died burning her fleet," she told Theon's cenotaph carved into the seawall of Pike. Blood must answer. Yet the compact promised each region autonomy. If Yara refused, she risked isolation. So she demanded instead that Euron face salt trial. Her ravens returned unanswered. Euron remained missing beneath the Blackwater, his drowned body rumored to whisper curses to fish. In the Reach, the new Lord Tarly, Sam's brother Dickon, bristled at the idea of elective monarchy. "Small council concessions cannot feed fields," he wrote Sansa. "Our coffers bled to seed winter grain. We require tax relief, not charters." Sansa forwarded the letter to Tyrion, who began drafting a realm-wide levy restructure tied to harvest yields rather than fixed quotas. And north of the wall, something stirred, something neither crown nor council yet sensed. White shadows roamed abandoned castles, drawn by a power displaced when the Night King fell. Fragmentary whites, robbed of their master, drifted like ice smoke seeking purpose. Ravens in the haunted forest screeched warnings none could decipher. Weeks folded into months. Spring walked the land earlier than any maester predicted, as though the long night's defeat coaxed sunlight deeper. Fields near the Blackwater bloomed in riotous color where wildfire had scorched them bare years before. Yet in King's Landing, new dangers brewed like fever in closed wounds. An assassin's blade, coated in basilisk blood, came within a finger's breadth of Daenerys one twilight as she inspected Regal's healing wing. Only Grey Worm's reflexes saved her. The assassin died with spear point splitting spine, but the revelation shook the court. His sigil, a red lion crossed by shattered chain, the sign of Lannister rebels refusing Cersei's condemnation. Jon doubled night watch. Davos chartered lantern ships to guard the harbor mouth. Brienne drilled new city guards chosen equally from Crownland's farmers and Reach volunteers, each sworn to a code of shields penned overnight. Protect small folk first, lords second, royals last. Tyrion quilled letters promising clemency to any rebel who disarmed, gold to any informer revealing plotters. Still, rumors of poisoning persisted. Varys's whispers found a cabal calling themselves the Iron Thorn orchestrating attacks. Former goldcloaks, debt collectors, profiteers who thrived on chaos. Their leader was said to be a faceless lord glimpsed only at dusk. One night, Arya returned like a gust through arrow slit, dragging a hooded figure whose wrists bled from silk-thin garrote wire. She dumped him before the small council. "Found your thorn," she said, voice calm. The hood came off, revealing Qyburn, thought executed months earlier but spared by buy-off guards. He smirked even as shackles closed, the kind of smirk that hides last secrets. "Tell us your patron," Daenerys demanded. "My patron has no face," Qyburn whispered. "Has no name." He coughed, lips flecked green. He had swallowed something. Within breaths, he convulsed and died. Tyrion cursed, slamming quill across table. Varys murmured a prayer older than kingdoms. Jon knelt, eyes hard. "If more shadows stalk these streets, we must drag them into light." So began the cleansing. Unsullied in city watch sweeping taverns after midnight, Arya stalking rooftops, Regal gliding overhead with eerie silence now that his wing healed. Within 3 nights, 20 conspirators knelt in chains. The rest fled city gates, vanishing into wheat seas southward. Soon after, the first great council gathered within the dragon pit. Chosen stewards, merchants, septons, and maesters from every realm, 300 souls in all. The pit's ruin had been cleared, circular arena ringed with cedar benches. High above, bright pennons of 9 regions snapped. Direwolf, falcon, trout, lion, rose, stag, sunspear, kraken, dragon intertwined with wolf. Jon opened the session by recounting the battle against the Night King, voice cracking not at horrors remembered but at friends named Benjen, Lyanna Mormont, Theon, Yora, Ed, Gren, Viserion even, whose flame once warmed skies but whose fall had chilled worlds. Each name hung in the air like bells rung for absent souls. Daenerys followed, speaking of Myreen's pits, Astapor's chains, Cartha's double-tongued courtiers. She described the weight of a crown forged by conquest alone and how she had nearly drowned in its molten arrogance. "Power without purpose devours itself," she said, voice steady. "We gather to give it shape broader than one head, kinder than one sword." Tyrion then proposed the Charter of Realms, a rotating elected monarchy, 2 rulers bound by Unsil approval, regional autonomy in internal law, shared defense funded proportionally, small folk courts, and Dragonwolf co-sovereignty for the Charter's first cycle until proof of the system's merit. Debate blazed for 9 days. Heated but bloodless, passionate but tempered by memory of frostbitten corpses and wildfire ghosts. Lord Glover argued the North should stand apart. Lady Alice Karstark shamed him with memories of Jon's nightly patrols along broken wall segments. Lord Hightower feared economic fracturing. Davos proposed harbor toll reductions offset by grain subsidies. Yara Greyjoy demanded salt rights. Tyrion brokered a compromise granting her fleet's wardship of western coasts in exchange for policing slavers. On the 10th dawn, parchment was signed, sealed with 9 regional sigils and 2 royal. Bells pealed not from seps, their towers still rubble, but from makeshift frames erected throughout the city, timber gongs resonating deep. Small folk flooded plazas, dancing to fiddles tuned after years of silence. Children chased one another beneath banners painted with wolves riding dragons, their laughter a balm to stone hearts. Sansa returned to Winterfell to oversee sowing of spring barley. She left behind an embassy of northern scribes to ensure charter clauses matured. Arya boarded a Braavosi flight bound west, her farewell a wink and whisper of, "I'll bring stories." Gendry watched her sail until horizons swallowed dusk-pink sails, then turned to Storm's End and its new refinery forging chain links from melted scorpion bolts, symbols of war repurposed. Jaime took ship for Casterly Rock, gold hand replaced by simple leather prosthetic. His mission, to steer his fractured house toward rebuilding under a council of bannermen. Westerlands would pay reparations not out of defeat, but of responsibility. He left behind a note for Brienne. "Oaths are heavier than steel, yours lightened mine." She answered by escorting the first grain convoy north, Oathkeeper flashing under dawn as she saluted passing sailors. Summer's edge crept across Westeros. Fields shimmered, orchards buzzed, rivers sang again. Yet in the haunted forest, the wind grew colder than season's right. A cluster of free folk hunters vanished near an ancient weirwood with a face too worn to speak. Onyx shapes slithered across snow. Something not dead, not alive, perhaps the fragments of a god broken when its avatar fell. Bran Stark, seated beneath the heart tree of Winterfell, felt whispers crawl along roots. He wrote to Jon, "Echoes stir beyond the frost. The wall is not the only gate, and not all gates stand of stone." When Jon read it beside the fire in the Red Keep Solar, a chill kissed his spine. He found Daenerys staring at the night sky where unfamiliar constellations flickered. She sensed his unease without words. "The dark is never done," he murmured. She touched his cheek. "Neither is dawn." Their lips met, tender, unhurried, balm for fear's future and past. Beyond the balcony, Drogon perched upon the old sept hill, wings half spread, watching stars as though deciphering languages older than flame. Months later, at Moat Cailin, construction crews raised a white granite tower crowned with black slate. It would serve as the first sentinel of the Charter Road, a line of watchposts connecting north to south for trade and warning. Jon rode north with a company of mixed soldiers, unsullied in loose wool for climate, northern archers, Dothraki outriders weaving in and out of tree line like hunters out of legend. Daenerys accompanied aboard Rhaegal's harness. The sight of two rulers traveling roads unescorted by legions shocked many villages into stunned cheers. They paused at each hamlet, listening to small folk petitions. A mill broken, a midwife lacking herbs, wild dog packs harassing goats. Jon knelt in muddy lanes, scribbling names. Daenerys crouched to cradle infants, promising healers and grain. When a flood threatened the White Knife, they helped haul sandbags until night swallowed breath. Fireside, they spoke of children someday running these same roads, never knowing the taste of white-hunted nights. At Winterfell, Sansa greeted them under banners newly embroidered with threads of gold, wolf and dragon entwined. Bran rolled forward in a wheeled chair carved from heartwood, eyes deep as still ponds. "The winds shift again," he said to Daenerys. "South, then west, then deeper than seas." She knelt. "What must we prepare for?" Bran's gaze did not lift from some distant vision. Dreams of men shaped the White Walkers. Dreams yet shape new storms. Jon rested a hand on Bran's shoulder. "We dreamed this dawn. We will face its storms." They spent weeks amid Winterfell's greening courtyards. Daenerys flying regal over Shaggy Dog's Hill, northern children chasing shadow on the ground. Jon drilling recruits mixing free folk with Karstark youths. Sansa led harvest festivals, inviting Dothraki to racehorses across the Barrow fields. Bets placed, laughs traded, no blood spilled. Torchlit nights saw songs blending Rhoynish cadences with Northmen's deep-throated chants. On the last night before their return south, Bran whispered to Jon alone beneath the weirwood, "You carry two fires, one in your blood, one in hers. When they merge, the world will forge anew." Jon searched his brother's face. Bran smiled faintly, as though hinting at truths too large for one dawn. The return journey took them through the Kingsroad forest where leaves hung gold. Halfway, A raven arrived bearing news. A plague of red blotches spreading in Lannisport, convoys quarantined. Daenerys diverted to assist, ordering healers and maesters north from Old Town, establishing infirmaries on city edge. She and Jon walked ward tents, distributing drafts. Rhaegal's fire smelted cauldrons to boil linens. The plague slowed, then vanished, though not before claiming a score of children. Jon mourned each burial. Daenerys refused to leave until gardens of memory were planted where the dead had lain. Their hands, once soft with privilege, grew calloused anew. And in callous, they found connection. Shared cups of bitter nettle tea, fingers entwined across campfire benches, voices hushed while stars kindled overhead. Rumors of their love traveled with caravan speed, stirring songs. Bards crafted tales of the Dragonwolf Covenant, of dire wolf cubs playing beneath dragon wings, of a crown forged not of swords but of intertwined ivy and scale. Some septons muttered heresy. Most small folk swooned. Inside the Red Keep, Tyrion delivered records of tax surplus for the first time in generations. Grain tariffs offset by reduced war spending. Varys initiated literacy drives, sending printing presses west to little villages. Brienne established a tourney of honor where knights competed not for golden purses but the right to serve a month in the small folk watch, guarding caravans. Winners boasted louder than if they'd won rubies. Yet across the narrow sea, whispers coalesced in Volantis, Pentos, Cohor. Sellsword captains disgruntled by lost Westerosi contracts. They eyed a new patroness, a woman with silver-dyed hair and blue robes, calling herself Nymeria Stormborn. She claimed blood right to Valyrian descent and swore to dethrone impostors. Ships loaded with unsullied deserters, second sons turned mercenaries, and Lysine alchemists left the long bridge under midnight sails. A council in the Red Keep studied intercepted scrolls. "A pretender," Daenerys said, brow furrowed. "A hydra sprouts another head when the first is cut," Tyrion murmured. Jon's knuckles whitened around a goblet. "We meet her with truth and strength combined." He rose and extended hand. "Ride with me again?" Daenerys took it without hesitation. Until storms cease. Their fleet sailed from Blackwater's mouth under twin standards, the Wolf and Dragon, and the swirling rings of the Charter. Ships bore plows beside spears, carpenters beside knights. For every soldier, 2 artisans. Proof the realm marched not for conquest alone, but to safeguard peace it had barely begun to taste. As they cleared the bay, a hush fell across decks. On the horizon, Drogon soared like midnight's promise, regal bright emerald fire. Below, Ghost padded from shadow, eyes golden, ears flattening to wind song, as though embracing land, sea, sky. Jon stood at the prow, Daenerys beside him. Spray flecked their cheeks. Behind, sailors steadied rigs while children of deckhands peeked from hatches, wide-eyed at dragons overhead. "We sail toward another war," Jon murmured. "Or toward the last battle needed," she replied. He turned. "Are we fools, chasing endless foes?" "We are dreamers," she corrected. "Dreaming the world better, each fight forging the path." Jon's smile cracked like sunrise over glaciers. He rested forehead against hers. The horizon beckoned with both dread and possibility. Together, they sailed, dragons wheeling, wolves bowing to wind. 2 fires braided into one dawning blaze, lighting a course across seas and souls alike, promising that even when darkness surged anew, the long dawn would rise, again and again, on the shoulders of those who dared to dream it. Salt wind howled across the deck of the Silver Drake as it carved a phosphorescent wake through the deep wine-dark of the summer sea. Night lay heavy, moonless, the stars occluded by bruised clouds that seemed to press ever lower, threatening to drown mast tops in their swollen bellies. Lanterns swayed in iron cages, throwing restless bars of ochre across half-slumbering sailors and heaps of bundled canvas. Somewhere aft, a bosun's whistle answered the whump of a loosened sheet, its shrill note snatched almost at once by the elements and tossed into oblivion. Jon Snow stood near the prow, gloved hands gripping the rail. Spray beaded on his cheeks and caught in the dark whiskers speckling his jaw. 5 years of northern winter had taught him stoicism before colder gales than this. Yet something about these southern tempests felt stranger, wilder, like a beast that laughed even as it bared its fangs. In the pit of his stomach coiled the familiar tension of impending conflict. Ahead lay the coast of Essos, the port city of Corin's rest first on their itinerary. Beyond that, the warm, dangerous currents leading toward Volantis, where rumor had birthed a pretender cloaked in dragon legend. Behind him, the deck creaked under fresh boots. Jon did not turn. He knew the cadence. Daenerys drew up beside him, the hood of her wolf fur cloak whipped back by the gale so that silver-white braids streamed like pennants. Her face, pale under the swinging lanterns, looked carved from intent. "She grows," she murmured after a time, gazing out over the curling waves. "Who?" Jon asked, though he already guessed. "Our adversary, Nymeria Stormborn." The queen made the name sound both alien and intimate, as though tasting an echo dredged from drowned Valyria. Every month her fleet swells. Qohor, Norvos, even Tyrosh, they send ships for promises of copper, of spice, of status in some new order. Jon's lips shaped a thin line. What she offers is less than smoke. But men thirst for any shadow that hints at power. Daenerys's eyes, reflecting wedge-shaped lantern fire, flicked to his face. "I did once," she reminded softly. "Smoke, shadow, and prophesy were all I owned. I built thrones from ash piles." He reached for her hand. Their gloves creaked as fingers interlaced. "You built more than that." They stood thus for several breaths, feeling the shared thrum of planks beneath their boots, the endless heartbeats of the sea. Far overhead, the booming wing beats of Drogon and Regal tore through clouds, great shapes momentarily illuminated by forks of sheet lightning. Ghost paced below decks where the ship's cat, having once tried to hiss him away from the galley stores, now skulked wide-eyed upon rafters. "Have you slept?" Jon asked. "An hour or two. Dreams? Just waves." A faint smile curved her lips. "But I cannot tell whether the waves were water or fire." Dawn slouched in behind ragged veils of rain. Corin's Rest, a once humble smuggler's cove perched between chalk cliffs, unfurled before them in ragged silhouettes of piers and crooked watchtowers. Above the crumbling sea gate, fresh banners cracked, black serpents on scarlet, sigil of the Free Company of the Crimson Coil, sell sails recently bought with the coin of the Pretender Queen. Davos Seaworth raised his cracked voice from the foredeck. "Scorpions on those towers, M-Lords." Jon's dark gaze settled on the squat engines hastily mounted beside rusted iron bells. Their wood was new-cut pine, pale against older masonry. Quick work, but perhaps shoddy, he would test that soon. Across two other masts rose the standards of allied lords, the seven-petaled rose of Reach envoys, the pentagonal Star of Dorne, and the direwolf over Drake banner of the Charter Throne. The fleets had scattered for speed but converged again here, 50-odd hulls lying just beyond Scorpion range. Launch boats bobbed between them, ferrying heralds and quartermasters with olive branches in one hand and spear shafts in the other. Within the great cabin of the Silver Drake, Daenerys convened her war council. Tyrion hunched over a damp chart, ink smudged. Davos dripped puddles as he peeled off his hood. Grey Worm stood sentinel, armor dull with salt. Behind, Missandei pored over cargo tallies. Jon traced the harbor sketch. "If we take the shore batteries at dawn tomorrow, the rest of the garrison cannot hold. Their morale hinges on those scorpions." Tyrion tapped a quill end against his teeth. "There is another way. I sailed these coves as a boy. Sink 2 hulks in the outer channel at ebb tide, blockading the harbor mouth, and Corin's Rest becomes a cage. Once fish runs thin, the sell sails will sell themselves to us for half their usual fee." Grey Worm's amber eyes narrowed. "Time is gold for rebels. Each delay allows their queen to sow deeper." "Agreed," Daenerys said. "We act swiftly, but we spare small folk." Her voice hardened on the last 2 words, and Tyrion inclined his head, chastened. Jon pointed to a headland jutting east. "Archers and catapults there. Regal begins the assault on the southeastern rampart. Drogon feints toward the tower scorpions but veers, drawing bolts so our sappers can set charges on the lower casements. Davos whistled low. That tower's kept the worst pirates out these 20 years. It'll take a dozen men to plant those charges. I'll lead them, Jon said. Daenerys's gaze snapped to him. You are ruler, not sapper. And you are queen, yet you ride dragons into battle. He watched her stern expression soften with reluctant acceptance. I leave nothing to chance, he added more gently. She sighed. Then we both fly. Together. Night fell warm and damp. On the quarterdeck, Jon found himself alone but for muted lamps and the whisper of oiled weapons. The smell of tar, rope, and seaweed was oddly soothing. He closed his eyes, sought calm. Yet behind his lids unspooled visions the old raven had sometimes shown him. Frosted forests humming with white shadows, spires of obsidian ice cracking under a red dawn. Those shapes had faded months ago, but now returned sharper, wearing unfamiliar masks, faceless daughters of storm and tide. Footsteps interrupted. Bran's voice, quiet and far away, drifted as though through tree boughs, though Bran himself remained in Winterfell. Dreams carry warnings, brother. The sea is wide, yet currents converge. Hold fast to what is true. Jon's eyes opened. For a heartbeat, the ghost noise lingered, then dissolved in wind. He rubbed his brow. Sleep or raven magic, he could not tell. Either way, he would heed it. They struck an hour before dawn. Grey Worm led the first boats, unsullied paddling in grim silence. Jon crouched in the prow of a second skiff, breath frosting even in southern mildness. Fear and focus forging a personal winter. Behind him, 10 Northmen volunteers clutched fused obsidian breaching charges. Small casks filled with dust ground from hard-home daggers, which, when set alight by wildfire wicks, would cleave stone near as cleanly as Valyrian steel. Above the clouds rode dragon silhouettes, Drogon and Regal drifting with wings locked, heat shimmer curling off their bellies. The sound of their flight, like distant furnace bellows, was nearly drowned by surf hammering cliff footings. A muffled clank cascaded across water. One scorpion had glimpsed them too early. Jon hissed, urging paddlers to redoubled speed. The bolt shot wide, smashing spray yards off port. 2 more crews pivoted, loading. Then Drogon stooped, his roar ripping the hazy violet of pre-dawn. A jet of red-orange fire met the tower's flank, stone glowing glass-orange. Bolts launched but skewed, warped shafts tumbling as leather loops burned away mid-flight. Jon's boat scraped barnacles. He vaulted onto a ragged landing stage and sprinted upslope, boots slipping on algae-slick boards. The Northmen followed, knuckles white on cask handles. Arrows hissed down. One man went limp, sliding into tide. Atop the battery, cell sails screamed curses in half a dozen tongues. Jon ducked under a crosscut swing, drove Longclaw up through boiled leather armor, felt ribs pop. Spattered crimson steamed against blade runes. A second mercenary lunged, curved sword glinting. Jon parried, pivoted, kicked knee, heard it crack, then ended the man with a downward chop. Lightning forked above, and Regal's flame speared the second tower. Under the onslaught, its wooden braces smoldered and sagged. Jon placed the first cask beside a buttress and struck flint to fuse. Green kissed pitch. He grabbed the next cask from Wex Hardy, a lean youth from White Harbor whose eyes burned brighter than the fuse. They edged deeper, planting charges among piles of tar-sealed scorpion shafts. Meanwhile, Grey Worm's ranks cleared the courtyard with silent precision. Shields interlocked, spears punching forward like piston teeth. A horn brayed sudden, high, strange.
Jon Spoon.
From the inner harbor came a surge of lantern lights. The rebel flagship Reaver's Oath prowling out, decks crowded. At its bow, a giant scorpion swiveled, crew working frantic. Its intended prey, Daenerys, swooping in low after Drogon's first pass. Jon's heart clenched. No time. Wex, he shouted, pointing at remaining casks. Finish it. Without waiting, Jon charged downhill into the courtyard, vaulted the low parapet, and burst onto a narrow walkway overlooking the inner jetty. He ran, boots slipping on wet slate, mined a single note. Reach her. Below, the Reaver's Oath fired. The bolt streaked upward, agleam with dawn. Daenerys saw, banked, but too late. The shaft grazed Drogon's flank in a shower of obsidian shards. The dragon screamed, flame sputtering. He flapped ragged, spiraled. Jon's bowstring thrummed. An arrow cracked from his longbow, striking the Scorpion crew chief in throat. Another arrow felled the loader. Chaos on deck. Yet the weapon reloaded. Then the battery charges blew. A crack like splitting worlds. Stone, timber, and flame erupted. The tower collapsed sideways onto the pier. Shock waves flung Jon against battlements. Dusty fire clouds rolled over the channel. The Reaver's Oath lurched as boulders and debris cascaded across its deck. The second Scorpion crashed, crushed by falling masonry. Above, Drogon steadied, banking away toward open sky, wounded but airworthy. Jon sagged to his knees, ribs aching. Rain hissed on smoldering rubble around him. Grey Worm, Helm Askew, emerged through dust. Gate secured, he reported. His eyes traveled to the channel where ships now surrendered. Aired white pennants fluttering. Harbor cleared. Jon exhaled a world's weight. Somewhere behind, the sunrise broke in molten orange, painting drifting smoke plumes like banners of fire. The negotiations took 2 days. Corran's Rest capitulated, its cell sails disarmed. Refugees, small traders, and fisherfolk were given edicts of pardon. The Crimson Coil captains surrendered their charter in exchange for long-term contracts to guard the Charter Road sea lanes, under heavy oversight. Jon insisted each mercenary provide an oath of mercy to small folk. Grey Worm wrote the language, and Davos taught them the ironclad meaning of breaking a seaworth pledge. Inside the commandeered tower keep, Daenerys rested upon a caneback chair while Maester stitched Drogon's grays with thread soaked in basilisk scale oil, Hightower scholars' new discovery to reduce suppuration in leathery flesh. She winced once, otherwise motionless. Jon entered, helmet tucked beneath arm. The room smelled of singed hide and fresh herbs. She met his eyes, and despite their mutual fatigue, a ripple of warmth passed between them. "They say you turned the tower to rubble by yourself," she teased weakly. "Wex Hardy did most of the work," Jon answered, grin aflicker. He dropped to a knee, checking the wound. A deep gash, but not lethal. Drogon's huge eye slid toward him, unblinking, ancient. "He'll fly again within days." "And your scratches?" she asked. Jon flexed his left hand where a scorpion splinter had sliced between fingers. "Stings." He removed a water skin, offered her a swallow. When she drank, some tension melted from her shoulders. "I feared the bolt would pierce him wholly. I feared it would find you. That would have grieved you?" A faint sparkle of jest. He did not smile. "It would have ended me." She looked down, lashes trembling. "Then we must both live." He took her free hand gently. They sat in silence until Regal roared outside, impatient for his brother's company. Weeks unspooled. The fleet, refurbished in Corran's Rest's dry docks, made for Volantis. Each dawn found winds hotter, sea calmer, horizons smeared with vibrant dust. In the high rigging sung bright-plumed birds stealing rest during migration. Sailors considered them good luck. Tyrion called them sky spies, muttering that news traveled on wings quicker than ravens. As they approached the black walls of Volantis, emissaries rode out under flags of truce. The Triarchs, anxious to preserve lucrative trade with Westeros Reborn, claimed no allegiance to Nymeria Stormborn, yet they admitted the Pretenders' war coffers had passed through their vaults. Bribes, pressure, promises had altered old alliances. Daenerys demanded an audience in the Hall of the 30, offering leniency for honesty. Jon counseled impartiality yet firmness. Appeal to their purse strings. Threaten their gates only if their greed outweighs reason. Inside the ancient marble colossus, under murals of dancing tiger priests and elephant generals, the Triarch Miria Valentin, draped in indigo silk, listened impassively. Triarch Pavo Lomar fiddled with a jade ring. The third seat, vacant. Its occupant rumored called back to preside over some internal scandal, perhaps bribery to the Pretender. Tyrion presented ledgers seized at Corin's Rest, shipments of Myrish crossbows, barrels of black powder, crates of Associ fire oil, all purchased by a consortium fronted by Nymeria Mara's blood. Myria Volantis' painted brows rose. She denied knowledge. Varys then produced contracts signed by her steward under seal. Her face drained of color. Daenerys spared the Triarch a kind of cold mercy. Volantis would pay triple tariffs for 10 years, supply grain to Crownland's famine relief, and cede 4 black wall bastions to neutral charter stewards, thus choking strategic access until trust regrew. Triarch Lomar accepted with bowed head, preferring humiliation to Dragonfire. Myria left the dais in tears, her peacock train wilting like bruised petals. That night, on a terrace overlooking the Orange River, Jon and Daenerys dined on lentil stew, flatbread, and oranges glazed with honey. The city below shimmered with lamplight, an inverted sky of golden droplets. Barges traversed the slow water, their lanterns swaying. Jon peeled an orange, handed half to Daenerys. Juice glistened on their fingers. "Do you remember Wintertown harvest festivals?" she asked. He blinked. "You've never been." "No, but your stories share them so vividly I can taste mulled cider on my tongue." She sucked a segment, smiling. "I'd like to visit at first snowfall. Then we'll ride north next season." He glanced at her face framed by flickering torches. "But you hate cold." "I'll bear it." Her grin turned sly. "You can teach me the secret of northern hearths." Jon's ears reddened. He reached for his wine. They laughed softly, comfortable in the warm hush. Yet eventually conversation drifted to heavier matters. Nymeria Stormborn's last bastion. Information gleaned from Valentine's spies suggested the Pretender had fortified herself on the island of the Red Mists, a volcanic speck near the Basilisk Isles. There, she built a small dragon of her own, not living flesh but iron belly filled with wildfire casks. Its mouth, wrought of bronze, could belch green flame across a harbor. If she launched it upon Westerosi ports, fear alone might undo the fledgling charter realm. Jon traced routes on parchment by torchlight. "We strike by sea but land troops behind her on the ash flats. Dragons neutralize the iron beast. Sappers invade her powder stores. Unsullied take the citadel." Daenerys nodded. "And if she tries to escape on sea? Greyjoy outriders circle the island. Raven's teeth longbows cover every channel. And if she unleashes the wildfire arsenal before we breach?" Her eyes glinted worry. "Then we pray wind favors open water." Jon swallowed. "I will lead the infiltration, just in case." She set her orange slice down.
"No."
"Yes," he answered, their gazes locked. In his she saw immovable conviction. In hers, a storm of fear and pride. At length she looked away to the river's glow. "Then promise me, if the worst arises, you return to me, burned, bloodied, scarred, but alive." "I promise." He took her hand and kissed her palm, tasting orange and salt. Days later, their combined force, 67 hulls strong, reached the ash-colored waters surrounding the red mists. The island's volcanic plume tainted clouds rust red, stench of sulfur stung throats. On the skyline towered the Iron Dragon, a hulking contraption of gears, tar-coated plates, and segmented neck. At its base rose walls of black basalt circled by trenches of burning pitch. Jon selected 50 of his best, a braid of Unsullied, Northmen, Dothraki climbers, and Stormlander sappers. They rode under cover of drifting pumice steams, beaching on the island's windward side where cliffs fractured into labyrinthine gullies. Up close, the ground cracked, exhaling heat. Pools of oily water flickered with ghost flame. Far above, Nymeria's guards patrolled catwalks, their lanterns dim in haze. The infiltration climbed switchback fissures, hugging rock cooled to brittle pumice. Jon led, Longclaw strapped across back, rope coil at his hip. Halfway to the parapet, a tremor shook the island, magma gurgling beneath. The Iron Dragon's joints clanked as if waking.
Jon signaled halt.
They waited until shudders calmed, then scaled again, emerging behind a supply hut jammed with oiled barrels. Grey Worm's silent gesture. Split. Teams fanned to sabotage fuel stores, jam winch machinery, disrupt bowsprings of scorpions. Jon and Wex Hardy crept toward the Iron Dragon's belly, a ribbed cavity where alchemists shuffled around bronze pressure flasks. Jon studied locks, 3 heavy iron hasps, each sealed with wax marks. He pried one loose. Wex wedged a dragonglass detonator inside, but before they could retreat, a voice rang out in High Valyrian, sharp as cracked glass. Nymeria Stormborn descended a grated stair. Silver-dyed hair spilled down her cobalt cloak, her eyes, pale as opals, fixed upon Jon like predator to prey. "So the wolf comes himself," she purred. Jon eased Longclaw free. "I'm no wolf tonight, just a man ending folly." She laughed, brittle. "Folly is believing one will can turn all realms. Your charter already cracks. Lion's plot in Lannisport, Rose's scheme in Highgarden. Men do not change, Targaryen. I'm a Stark. Blood sees blood," she countered. "Would you deny the fire in your veins? Come, embrace the dragon's gift. Together we scorch the old world and birth unbroken dawn." Jon stepped forward, blade catching furnace glow. "Dawn is earned, not burned," she hissed, flicked fingers. Guard alchemists raised fire sticks. Jon Dove slashing the first. Green flame vomited from shattered vial, igniting a hiss of rushlight. Wex hurled the detonator into a heap of wildfire pots, then grabbed Jon's cloak, dragging him toward rear hatch. They pelted across catwalks while flame chased like vengeful djinn. Behind, Nymeria screamed fury. Whether wounded or enraged, Jon could not tell over thunder of vein-bursting heat. They leapt from parapet into ash garden below as an explosion tore open the Iron Dragon's belly. Molten slag burst skyward. Bronze shards whistled like hell-forged hail. Up above, Drogon and Rhaegal swept low, flame jets meeting plumes in crackling clashes of color. Red against green, orange against black. Ships offshore braced, sails reefed tight against concussion gusts. Jon rolled, coughing, ears ringing. The world staggered in hazy half-silence punctured by distant roars and the hum of dying wildfire. He scrambled, found Wex unconscious but breathing. He hefted the youth over his shoulder and half-dragged downhill. Lava glass crunched under boots, still hot enough to scorch soles. At shoreline, they found dinghies already filled with fleeing guards raising white cloths. Grey Worm waved them aboard. Jon collapsed into hull bottom, lungs aflame while sailors pushed off. On deck of the flagship Morning Star, Daenerys awaited, eyes wide with mingled horror and relief. She reached down. He grasped her forearm, allowed himself to be lifted, trembling. Rhaegal circled overhead, victorious cry echoing over cooling cinder fields where once an iron monster had threatened. Nymeria Stormborn, herself consumed by her invention, would menace no more. The voyage home felt longer, but hearts lighter. Volantis, grateful for spared trade, gifted spice caravels and orange tree saplings that perfumed every hold. Corrin's Rest now flew green banners bearing entwined wolf-dragon sigil, its harbor bustling with carpenters refitting hulks into mercantile carracks. Within the captain's cabin, Daenerys knelt beside Jon's bunk, wiping soot from his brow. He smiled faintly, though bandages crisscrossed his chest. "Another promise kept," she whispered. "And another scar," he jested hoarsely. She brushed a lock of hair from his eye. "I will count them like stars some night." "Too many," he said, closing fingers around hers. "But each has its story." She leaned down, kissed the bruise blooming along his cheek. "Then I shall learn them all." Outside the porthole, dawn unfurled rose and gold across a placid sea. Rhaegal glided close, wingtip almost brushing mast tops. Drogon followed, his vast silhouette blotting the newborn sun for a heartbeat. Children on deck cheered, calling the dragons by new names. Sunrise and Stormbreaker. Names changed, symbols endured. News preceded them to Westeros. When the fleet anchored beneath Dragonstone's cliffs, bells tolled from White Harbor to Old Town, each peal rung by free hands, not pressed by conquerors. In King's Landing, markets bustled under banners of mixed hue. Bakers shaped loaves like little dragons curling around direwolves, and scholars began copying the Charter of Realms into vellum for every holdfast that boasted a scriptorium. Jon and Daenerys disembarked last, walking the rebuilt pier side by side. Grey Worm's command greeted them, ranks parted. Sansa awaited at the jetty base, flanked by Brienne and Tyrion. She smiled, relief shining in blue-gray eyes. "Your wounds?" she asked, pressing a hand to Jon's arm. "Healing," he assured. "And the rebel queen?" "Fell to her own flames," Daenerys answered, voice soft yet resolute. Sansa nodded. "Then the realm may breathe." From the parapet above, maester chains rattled as bells rang anew. Rhaegal swooped low, releasing a trumpet-like call. Children squealed, running beneath the shadow as though chasing a giant kite. Tyrion produced a slim book, first printed copy of the Charter. Gold leaf edged its wolf and dragon seal. He handed it to Daenerys and Jon. "Signatures faded during your journey. Ink quality." He winked. "Perhaps add a flourish." Jon exchanged a glance with Daenerys. She opened the book, and together they signed. Her crimson wax seal stamped with triple-headed dragon, his gray dye pressed into direwolf sigil. Two prints overlapped, forming, quite unintentionally, an eighth-point star. Davos chuckled at the coincidence. Bran, observing from his wheeled chair on a rampart, allowed a small smile. "Symbols shape memory," he said to no one in particular. In the days that followed, envoys arrived bearing no swords, only ledgers and seed grain. Dorne offered sun-cured oranges and cavalry exchanges. The Reach pledged rose-cut gems for rebuilding sept libraries. The Iron Islands sent nets of silver fish for city soup kitchens. And in the Riverlands, fires long cold were rekindled in hearths that once knew only war. Yet beyond such bustle, quiet moments carved deeper meaning. In the godswood transplanted to the Dragonstone courtyard, white weirwood grown from northern Sion, Jon knelt beside Daenerys beneath whispering leaves. The tree's face, newly carved by a northern woodwright, bore a serene expression of both sorrow and mirth. Jon produced a simple ring, band of ironwood polished, inlaid with a single scale shed by Rhaegal. "When we spoke of harvest festivals," he said, voice unsteady, "I realized I wanted every season with you. No throne, not even two, matters compared to that." Daenerys's breath caught. "You know I will rule only if equal. As wife, partner, queen, ruler, whatever word suits, but never less than equal," he vowed. Tears brightened her violet eyes. She extended her hand. He slid the ring onto her finger. Around them, the weirwood leaves rustled as if in blessing. A distant dragon cry answered from sky, a sound both ancient and newborn. Winter would come again. Old gods and new gods alike promised that cycle never stopped. But the realm, bruised and mending, had found something rarer than victory. A moment of accord, fragile, luminous as first ice crystals on autumn grass. Under dragons' watchful wings and wolves' silent vigilance, the Great Council resumed, not to wage war, but to discuss roads, libraries, seed grants, and a new healing order sworn to roam villages forgotten by lords for too long. On the longest day of the year, torches lined the rivers from the neck to the arbor, each lit from a traveling flame carried by riders relaying from Winterfell's heart tree to the docks of Dorne. Lamps floated on lakes, lanterns lifted above battlements. Across that chain of moving light, children pointed to the heavens while old men wept for dreams they never dared voice. Fire and ice bridged by living hands, evidence that hope, like dawn, could be summoned again and again, so long as even a single soul believed the night worth challenging. And at the very center of it all, on a balcony of the Red Keep now stripped of its iron throne, replaced by twin seats of polished cedar, stood Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen. No crowns burdened their brows. Instead they wore rings of carved ironwood and braided silver, symbols so modest that wandering bards stumbled for lyrics to exalt them. Together they watched the river of lights ignite the city below, and they smiled, hands intertwined, knowing the work of peace would begin anew with sunrise. But tonight at least, The realm dreamed, untroubled, beneath their watch. The summer air over Dragonstone shimmered with heat rising from black stone quartz. Yet a fresh breeze from the narrow sea brought the scent of salt and kelp that cooled the skin and filled lungs with vigor. Jon Snow left the council chamber as bells from the island's modest sept tolled 10th hour, their iron voices carrying over gullies scored by lava ages ago. He paused atop the stair that slanted toward the training yard. Below, unsullied drilled beside northern spearwives, the rhythmic thunder of shields punctuated by the lighter beat of Dothraki hoof circles along the outer rampart. It was a new cadence, disparate hearts forging a single pulse, and Jon found himself tapping his gauntlet thumb against the balustrade in unconscious reply. Regal basked on the high spur beyond the keep, wings half-mantled, eyes slivered in contented torpor. Plumes of vapor rose each time the green dragon exhaled, turning to ghosts in the sun. Farther along the ridge loomed Drogon. Black scales overlapped like obsidian shingles. He watched the world with the impassive alertness of a being older than men's kingdoms. No scorpions aimed at him now. Instead, a small scaffold of maesters and farriers worked to fit new lightweight mail along the edges of his forewings, an experiment in deflecting the next enemy's quarrel. The dragon tolerated their careful touch with the regal forbearance of a sovereign permitting courtiers at his clawed feet. Jon's gaze drifted toward the lower terrace where Daenerys knelt amid wooden cradles, guiding a gardener's trowel among seedlings. At first he thought his eyes deceived him, a queen in silk kneeling in dirt, but he recognized her pale braids, the familiar set of her shoulders. Children from the kitchens clustered around her, each entrusted with a pot containing an orange tree sapling gifted by Volantis. Their small fingers patted soil while she whispered the Valyrian names for water, root, sun. The sight coaxed a quiet warmth through Jon's chest, stronger than any victory cheer on a field. He descended. The afternoon sun threw long lances of light between parapet gaps, stippling the flagstones. Daenerys looked up at his footfalls and smiled. A smear of black earth streaked across her cheekbone. He reached out thumb to wipe it away. She caught his wrist, laughter spilling like chimes. "You missed," she said, showing a second streak upon her nose. He returned her grin. "King in filth, queen in growth. Both of us look more Northfolk than dragon lords." She rose, dirt falling from knees. The children scattered, saplings in hand, running toward a row of stone planters reserved for royal gardens. One small girl, Nava, paused, gold curls haloed in sunlight. "Will the wolves like oranges, your graces?" she asked. Jon crouched until their eyes met. "Wolves prefer meat, little one, but they'll guard trees that feed their pack." Nava nodded with the solemnity of a scorekeeper at a god's trial, then skipped off. Daenerys watched with eyes softened by possibilities. She wiped palms on her skirt and took Jon's arm. "Come," she said. "If we must debate grain tariffs again tonight, I need the memory of soil under my nails." They walked the length of the wall above the sea, withdrawing from throngs of scribes and stewards crowding the halls.
Gullkreis uild overhead.
Ships drifted like painted toys in the channel. Reach Dromans delivering lumber, Bravosi cogs heavy with iron or Northman nars swelling with wool and smoked haddock. Charter banners snapped. From every mast, red, gray, gold, copper, blue, threaded by a central pennon of white bearing entwined wolf and dragon in charcoal ink. The world had begun to dream new colors. Jon halted where the parapet bulged outward into a half-circle bastion. Storms had worried blunt corners into pocked crescents. Daenerys leaned against sun-warmed stone, elbows resting, her gaze sweeping horizon where waves glittered like hammered glass. "Letters came from Winterfell this dawn," he said. "Tormund writes the weirwoods glow brighter every midnight. Bran senses something stirring past the rivers of ice, shapes that part from bodies and drift like smoke seeking a hearth." Her brow furrowed. "He wrote me the same, but his meaning slippery as eel. I've learned to trust his warnings, yet wonder if shadows forever stand beyond the firelight no matter how high we bank embers. Perhaps this is what it means to guard a realm. The watch never ends." Jon's lips pressed. I once spoke those same words along the wall, thought I understood them, then discovered watchers must teach the living how to live, not merely how to fear. We've given them parchments, grain, laws, things more daunting than snow demons. I fear failure inside these walls, not out there. Daenerys tilted to look upon him. The council will debate itself to ash if we let it. They need our steadiness. And if dark breaths rise north again, we will meet them with fires newly tended. She placed a hand over his heart. Every victory plants its own seed, Jon. Some grow thorns, some fruit. We must choose the gardens we water. A muffled blast echoed from the yard. A forge hammer striking anvil thrice in quick succession. Signal for council convening. Jon sighed. Time to water the thorns. They turned toward the keep. As they walked, Daenerys laced her fingers through his. The simple intimacy steadied Jon more than any speech or banner. The council chamber carved into Dragonstone's belly resembled a giant's ribcage. Arcing vaults supported by basalt pillars, walls inlaid with veins of red crystal that glimmered when torches flared. Around the central table waited Tyrion, Sansa, Davos, Grey Worm, Varys, Brienne, Gendry, and Prince Quentyn Martell, each arriving by varying causeways and stairs. Maps sprawled across plank boards, coastal outlines, caravan routes, parchment-thin sheets overlaying grain yield projections atop fortress schematics. Tyrion rose atop a carved steps tool. "We have 2 petitions of note," he began, voice echoing among buttresses. "First, from House Redwine. They request leniency on wine export levies, citing storm damage to last harvest. Second, a more pressing matter. Lady Yara reports sightings of strange craft along the lonely light. No sails, yet they glide faster than galleys. Some say ghost ships. Others, Carthian sea silk hulls driven by water wheels." His mahogany gaze flicked to Jon. "What say our watchers?" Jon leaned forward, elbows on charred oak. "The North's ravens speak of calm seas. No rumors traveled east of Skagos. If Yara's scouts speak true, we need eyes nearer." He glanced to Gendry. "Storm's End can spare fast carvels fit for open water. Equip them with bronze stem rams and Sandor flare arrows for night signals." Gendry nodded, arms muscled from smithing. "I'll send 2 tonight." Davos added, "Best place lanterns along the Shield Islands. A line of watchers seeing watchers." Sansa tapped a quill. "The Redwine's wine matter. Tyrell notes show they still hold surplus from 2 years past. Their levy complaint masks politics. They resent our road tolls on arbor shipments. Suggest we barter. Reduced levy for 3 seasons of free grain distribution to river villages." Daenerys smiled faintly. "You learned negotiation swift." "Necessity," Sansa returned, eyes briefly shadowed by older scars. "Winter teaches lean bargains. They shaped agreements. Loan of crown coffers to rebuild Lonmouth Breakwall. Charter for a collier's guild to ensure coal for northern forges. Assignment of Dothraki outriders to patrol Dornish marches where bandits preyed on new caravan roads. Each solution required coin, riders, compromise, and each met haggling, jesting, the occasional bark of temper. Yet beneath it all pulsed an undercurrent of shared resolve. None would allow the world to fall silent as it once had. Hours passed. Torches burned low. Finally, Varys spoke from his quiet corner. "I bore tidings darker." He unfurled a silken strip. "From the citadel, Archmaester ember-tested shards collected from the wild north of the wall. His letter claims the fragments radiate cold yet bare grooves made by mortal hands, like obsidian arrows shaped in imitation of White Walker spears." Tyrion frowned. "Who carves such relics?" "Not walkers," Varys said, "nor free folk. The hunters who brought them south found them clutched by skeletal forms wearing bronze wristlets, patterned with glyphs unknown even to Old Town lore." Jon felt a chill despite heat. "Children of the forest? Perhaps an offshoot," Varys offered. "Or something else." Daenerys' voice softened. "If someone forges weapons beyond the wall, they may aim to reclaim powers broken when the Night King fell. We cannot ignore." Grey Worm's spear tapped stone. "Send scouts." "Scouts vanish north," Jon said. He stared at Regal's silhouette through an arrow slit. Dragons remain immune to cold. I'll fly. Take a small company of free folk I trust, no more. Daenerys's brows knit. You barely healed from red mists. I'll heal in flight, he interrupted gently. And dreams warn me Bran's words weigh more each hour. Silence claimed the chamber. At last Sansa sighed. Then I ride too, not north of the wall. I leave that folly to wolves and dragons. But I take the King's Road, muster lords hapless at complacency. If new frost rises, they'll not cower behind hearths again. Jon met her gaze, pride bittersweet. Thank you, little sister. Sister of kings, Tyrion quipped under breath. She shot him a look half dagger, half humor. Daenerys turned to Grey Worm. Prepare Regal's harness, provisions for 6 days. I fly with the king. No, Jon said. Not this time. Her eyes flashed. He swallowed. The realm cannot lose both monarchs in a northern mist. If I fail, you hold the crown. If you lose yourself, my life adds nothing. She stiffened. We rule together or not at all. He stepped close, voice low. Then rule this moment. Lead councils, finish charter roads, mend Westerland's copper. I will return before first frost. He rested forehead against hers, ignoring curious eyes around table. I carry you with me. Daenerys exhaled, tension melting though fear lingered. She nodded once. Return. 2 dawns later Jon stood on the upper yard. Regal crouched behind, tail lashing. Wind gusted from the east, tasting of rain and autumn's cusp. He wore riding leathers lined with bearskin, long claw across back, small crossbow slung under arm. Gift from Gendry with bolts tipped in dragonglass. Free folk riders assembled. Tormund Giantsbane, Aegrin the Bow-Eyed, and ragged Talric Stoneside. They rode shaggy garrons and bore bone-handled axes. Their laughter brightened the morning though Jon sensed the edge beneath. They too felt the pull of unknown. Daenerys climbed the stair, cloak snapping. She carried a small wooden box. Open at twilight each day, she said, pressing it to him. He raised brow. For luck, she explained. He tucked it inside saddle pack, then clasped her hand. Keep Tyrion sober, she smiled. An impossible quest. Choose another blessing. He leaned, kissed her softly despite onlookers, tasting sea wind on her lips. Then keep your own heart hopeful. With that, he swung onto Regal's back. The dragon leapt skyward, wings snapping once, propelling them past turrets. Jon glanced down. Daenerys stood alone in the yard center, silver hair whipping, one hand lifted until distance blurred gestures into dream. Days stretched into a tapestry of grays and blues. They skirted torrential storms near the Twins, soared above glimmering lakes in the neck, paused at Moat Cailin where outriders hailed Jon with cheers. Sansa's column, 500 mixed riders, glinted along King's Road in orderly wedges. She lifted a crimson banner as salute. Jon dipped Regal's wingtip in reply, a promise carried on wind. Beyond last hearth the world grew starker. Pine claws rasped at sky, frost-rimmed riverbanks at dawn. Night fires crackled beneath ancient watchtowers remanned by wildlings and Northmen alike. They crossed the shattered wall near Eastwatch, stones still befouled by sorcery scars. Past the breach, the haunted forest huddled beneath a pall of silence louder than any battle din. Jon felt the hush press against ribs. They established a small camp at the edge of a frozen lake dotted with snow-dusted islands. Tormund built a ring of fires. Talric set snares for hair. Aegrin climbed a pine to scout for shapes. That first night, Jon remembered Daenerys's box. He opened it by firelight. Inside lay a strip of parchment bearing a single Valyrian phrase inked delicate. He traced letters, "To the stars that watch your path." Beneath, a tiny bead of dragonglass threaded onto a silver chain. He placed it around his neck. It warmed almost instantly, as though charged by some internal glow. Comfort flowed through him like mulled wine. The next morning they ventured deeper. Snow swirled though the sky above remained clear, eddies forming without wind. Regal snorted, uneasy. They pushed on. By mid-afternoon, they reached a valley where trees bent outward, trunks dusted with frost, although ground below showed autumn loam. At its center rose a mound of stone shards. Each fragment resembled obsidian but striated by shimmering veins of faint blue. Jon dismounted. Cold radiated from the mound, biting through gloves. He pried a sliver. Grooves indeed lined its surface, spirals and geometric cuts unlike children's swirling runes. Tormund muttered an oath. Ygritte prodded fragments with arrow. They rang high and brittle. Below the shards lay bones. Delicate, long, some fused in unnatural joints. Around a wrist still clung a bronze cuff etched with whorls that matched shard grooves. Jon's skin crawled. He knelt, studying. The cuff bore symbols somewhat like Valyrian but reversed, as though glimpsed in water then copied. He sensed a design older even than children's true tongue. Then he glimpsed deeper scuff marks in the dirt. Footprints, rounded, three-toed, smaller than man. They moved away from the mound into denser wood. He signaled. Tormund grunted readiness. They followed the trail, leaving Regal perched sentinel on a cliff. The prince wound between tree trunks, occasionally pausing at saplings where bark appeared bled of color, sap frozen as clear crystals. After half a league, they reached a hollow so dark even midday light faltered. In the gloom, huddled figures, 5, maybe 6, crouched around a central pit that emitted a faint azure glow. Jon slipped behind a felled log. Others flanked. He raised hand. Tormund readied spear. The creatures stood taller than children of the forest, maybe Jon's chest height, but slender. Their skin glimmered like moonlit ice. Faces lengthened into tapered snouts. Eyes large, pearl white without pupil. They wore nets of thin silvery metal across torsos, shimmering like spider silk. At their waists hung blades of crystal semi-transparent. They spoke in clicks and hushes reminiscent of icicles chipping.
Jon exhaled fog.
So they were living, not whites, not shadows, something else. One turned, nostrils flaring, his gaze fixed directly on Jon's hiding place. It tilted head, then emitted a series of trills. Before Jon could reveal himself peacefully, Ygritte's tension snapped. Her arrow flew. It struck the creature's shoulder, shattering into powder on contact. The being stumbled back, keening. Others rose, drew blades that flared with blue fire. Cold blossomed in the hollow, frost crawling over fallen leaves. Jon shouted, stepping out with palms raised. "We seek no fight." But Talric had already hurled an axe. Clash inevitable. Chaos erupted. Cold daggers of air sliced toward the free folk. Tormund's fur coat frosted in an instant. Jon drew Longclaw, Valyrian steel humming. He parried a crystal blade. Shock of contact numbed his arm, yet blade held. He pivoted, disarming an attacker with pommel strike. The creature glided backward, impossibly swift. Ygritte loosed more arrows to little effect. They powdered on impact. Tormund roared, smashing frozen air barrier with raw strength. He grappled one creature, but frost spread over his beard. Jon severed an icy blade, then swept low, nicking the being's leg. Instead of blood, vapor hissed. It jerked but did not fall. Suddenly, a deafening screech shattered the sky. Regal dived, emerald fire torrenting the hollow's edge. Heat warped frost, steam billowing. The creatures recoiled, hissing. Their net armor flared bright, then dulled. They fled between trees, vanishing in flicker of refracted light. The azure pit winked out as though swallowed. Jon panted, heart thunderous. Tormund slapped frost from beard. Ygritte muttered curses about arrow waste. Jon examined the abandoned pit. Shallow bowl carved of the same shard material, lined with concentric rune rings. A central cavity still pulsed faintly. He prodded with gloved finger, cold like void. "These folk not dead things," Tormund rasped, "but they burn soul cold." "Worse than walk in shadows," Ygritte spat. Jon sheathed Longclaw. "We need Bran. And Sam's books." They trekked back to Regal. In sky swirling overhead, dusk began to gather, though sun not yet set. Jon sensed the world tilting, an axis unseen shifting by small degrees. That night, around fire, Jon opened Daenerys' box again. A second parchment waited. The horizon is wide, but our bond is wider. Trust the fire within. He stared into coals until images of ice creatures bled red and melted into ash. Next dawn, they flew south, urgent. They skirted storms, skipped rest. At White Harbor, Jon sent Raven ahead detailing findings. By the time they crossed the neck, Ravens answered back. Bran required Jon at Winterfell. Maesters in Old Town confirmed similar shards washing ashore on Skagos. Worse, ghost fires glowed at night across Shiverwood groves. Jon pressed Regal faster. Yet overhead, new lights shimmered. Ribbons of green and lilac across blue midday, aurora beyond season. Every villager they passed stared skyward, whispers following like ripples. New omen, new cold. When Winterfell's walls finally rose, banners hung limp in still air. No winter wind. A hush persisted. Jon dismounted before Godswood Gate. Bran waited beneath red leaves, his eyes milky depthless. Sansa stood behind him, cloak feathered with fresh frost though air felt mild. Bran spoke before greetings. The hinge of the world loosens again. Those you met are children of neither life nor death. They are echo, remnants of power the others wielded, seeking new master. Jon inhaled. Can we stop them? Perhaps, Bran answered. But we must bar the door they pry. Their runes call to wells beneath the dusk lands. Sorcery older than dragonfire. We need dragon blood, wolf blood, seed of trees, and breath of dawn. Sansa frowned. Riddles. Bran's sightless gaze shifted to Jon. You carry all but one. He turned to Sansa. She carries dawn. Sansa flushed. I am mortal, Bran. As are we all. Yet dawn resides in mortal hope. Jon knelt. Tell us what must be done. Within days messengers raced along every realm road. Some by horse, some by raven, some by regal swift wing. Daenerys arrived astride Drogon, descending upon Winterfell's courtyard in swirl of soot and snow. The old stones had not felt dragon heat since Torrhen knelt. Townsfolk watched with mingled wonder and terror. Yet when Daenerys swung down and embraced Sansa before all, the watchers cheered. A frost broken. Bran laid out the ritual. A barrier not of ice or flame but living memory bound by root and breath. To weave it required merging bloodlines at the heart tree, pouring dragon flame through weirwood conduits awakened by old songs. Ravens would carry chant across Grove south to Storm's End, west to Casterly Rock, east to Dragonstone. Each grove would answer, forming a lattice that encircled Westeros like invisible wall. The shard's call would then echo back upon themselves, sealing the dormant wells. The plan was perilous. If chants faltered or dragonfire overwhelmed roots, groves might burn, severing bond between gods and men. But if they did nothing, the ice echoes would gather into something worse than Night King, without the flawed mercy of a human mind. Preparations spanned weeks. Weirwood priests from the north, children of the forest survivors from Isle of Faces, Red Priestess Melanie from Volantis bearing scrolls, maesters blending wildfire and sap to temper flame. Tormund assembled free folk singers whose throats had roared against endless night. Dothraki keening matched them, voices braiding in new harmonies. Even Lannisport bards arrived, gold lions stitched over recent scars. On the night of convergence, a hush deeper than snowfall blanketed the world. Moons, Jonos and Yrah shared the sky, one pale silver, one faint rose. Stars glimmered like frost grains on velvet. At Winterfell's heart tree, Bran sat at the roots, hands spread upon bark. Jon and Daenerys knelt opposite, palms pressed to wood. Between them lay a shallow bowl carved from Regal's cast scale, filled with water from the hot springs. Let memory flow, Bran whispered, though his voice carried to distant towns as though borne by breeze. Jon sliced his palm with dragonglass. Crimson droplets fell into bowl, swirling like dancers. Daenerys did the same, her blood lighter, a shade of wine. The mixture churned, then stilled, reflecting their faces. Bran began to sing no language men spoke. It sounded like ice cracking in thaw, wind sigh through reed, wolf howl, dragon croon. The heart tree answered, leaves shivering though air calm. Across Westeros, in dawn gloom, other heart trees quivered. At storm's end, old gnarled stumps sprouted a single new leaf. At Highgarden, secret weirwood hidden in sept crypt glowed. In Bravos, acolytes of the many-faced god paused as statue eyes wept saps of white, bridging seas. Daenerys closed her eyes, let memories bloom. Of dusty roads in red waste, of maiden steps into scalding bath unburned, of Khal Drogo's laughter, of chains shattered in Meereen, of Viserions' death in northern sky. Jon felt them, images pouring through bark into him, into tree, into world. He offered his own. Ned's quiet smile, Ghost's first whimper, Ygritte's laugh among hot springs. The moment knife pierced his heart, the feel of Daenerys' hand after crownless vows. Dragon flame erupted from Drogon and Regal above, but not at the tree. They breathed skyward. Fire formed spirals of red and green twisting around tower peaks, meeting high as twin comets colliding. The sparks expanded, webbing into lattice of ember. Invisible threads descended into earth, lacing roots. At that instant, across the wall's corpse, ice echoes recoiled. In their frozen hollows, pits flickered violently then snuffed. The azure runic bowls cracked. Cold plumes hissed and dispersed. The slender beings raised silver nets, but strands drooped lifeless, runes fading. They keened a long, mournful note before dissolving into snow dust. Bran's eyes flew open, irises whirling with starlight. The world seemed to exhale. Jon staggered. Daenerys braced him. The bowl between them now held not blood but water clear as dawn sky. A single weirwood leaf dr. Ifted onto surface, floating. Ravens burst from branches in flurries like black confetti. Their calls carried along roads and rivers. A proclamation of balance restored. The days following became a festival unmatched. At Winterfell, mead flowed from dawn to dusk. Dothraki raced horses across frost-silver moors. Free folk wrestled stag knights in friendly bouts. Children climbed Regal's tail while maesters scolded fruitlessly. Sansa organized feasts, each honoring one region. Tyrion recited limericks so bawdy Bran's owls flew away. Jon and Daenerys stole moments in quiet library alcoves, among tomes dusted yet vital. They spoke not of crown burden but of simpler wonders. How oranges might grow in glasshouses heated by hot springs. How direwolves' hearing changed with seasons. Whether dragons dreamed in color or scent. Once he found her asleep over maps, quill still tucked behind ear, cheeks smudged with ink. He watched the gentle rise of her shoulders, feeling worlds safe enough for such sleep. One crisp morning Bran summoned them. Snowflakes drifted though the sun shone. He wheeled from the godswood beneath arch of red leaves, eyes regaining humanity's depth. The door has closed, he said, but walls locked too tight breed famine. Remember to leave windows for wind. Daenerys nodded. We will. Bran's lips curled almost wry. I see another window soon. A child born of ice and fire, carrying seeds of both worlds. Nurture with patience. Strong roots hold castles when storms return. Jon felt Daenerys' fingers entwine with his. They exchanged a glance. Astonishment, wonder, a flicker of fear, but said nothing. Some dreams best grown in silence first. Winter bled into spring again, earlier this year and with softer rains. The Charter Throne, as people named the twin seats, moved from Dragonstone to a grand hall rebuilt atop the Hill of Rhaenys in King's Landing, chosen deliberately apart from the melted iron throne. Cedar beams replaced jagged swords. Stained glass skylights depicted wolves, dragons, flowers, krakens, suns, boars, trouts, stags. Visitors marveled at halls smelling of fresh timber rather than old rust. In the third year of their joint reign, the first free fair convened outside Harrenhal's once cursed walls. Merchants hawked Dornish citrus beside northern mammoth hide boots. Ironborn sold pearls strung on golden wire net. Children of forest danced with puppet wolves carved by reach carpenters. High in the tower remains, maesters announced new lunar calendars aligning both Westerosi and Essosi star records. Scholars from Karth exchanged charts with Citadel novices, knowledge crossing seas without sword. One twilight Jon walked among stalls unnoticed beneath plain cloak. He bought candied lemon for Daenerys, cinnamon twists for Ghost, who ate them anyway. He paused at a smith's tent where a boy hammered bronze glass arrowheads. The boy looked up, cheeks smeared soot, and asked if Jon would bless the craft. Jon chuckled, laid a hand on the anvil, and spoke of forging not only weapons but plow points and lantern hooks, the small metals that hold daily peace. The boy listened wide-eyed. His mother slipped a pendant into Jon's palm. A tiny steel direwolf perched on dragon wing. Later that night Jon returned to their pavilion overlooking a mirror lake. He found Daenerys strumming a lute inelegantly, humming half-remembered Giscari lullaby. He joined, voice rusty but earnest. They sang under lanterns until stars blurred above water. In quiet that followed, Daenerys laid her head upon his shoulder. Tomorrow we travel to the Arbor. Next moon the Eyrie. Will the roads ever shorten? They already have, he murmured. Distance is measured in fear, not leagues. Fear lessens. She smiled, tracing the locket he'd placed around her neck, the steel wolf upon dragon wing. Then the realm grows small enough to hold in one heart. He kissed her hair. 2 hearts. Across the lake, torches mirrored constellations drifting above. Somewhere regal roost on a hilltop vineyard, tail curled around grape trellis. Drogon patrolled night currents, satisfied. Wolves howled from forest fringe. Not warning, but song. Children of the forest answered with wooden flutes. Dothraki drums joined. Soon every campfire clapped rhythms until music rippled like rain across the free fair. Under that chorus, Jon and Daenerys closed their eyes, foreheads touching, and felt more than kingdom or crown. The living pulse of a land that had tasted death and chosen life. It throbbed through soil, rivers, stone keeps, dragon flame, wolf blood, all bound by threads of stories told and not yet told. And long after the last torch sputtered, after the last drumbeat faded into mist, that pulse endured, resilient, resilient, a promise whispered to every dawn. The long night might come again, but so would those who dared to kindle daybreak. In years still uncharted by Maester's quills, children would climb airy heights of the rebuilt White Tower and ask their teachers how 2 rulers of opposing blood changed fate. Those teachers would speak not of thrones, battles, or laws, nor even of dragons and ghosts. They would speak of gardens in cracked courtyards, of songs in forgotten tongues shared beside hearths, of scars accepted and hands taken despite them. They would speak of doors closed to darkness but windows left open to wind, because wind carries seeds, and seeds grow forests that outlast kings. And somewhere beyond even the teachers' tales, on a starlit shore where waves caressed obsidian sand, a woman with silver braids and a man with north shadow eyes would walk barefoot. Their footprints would fill with foam, then fade, yet the warmth of their clasped hands would linger in the air like sunrise waiting just below horizon. Ready always to rise.